Good morning. Welcome into this Thursday of Super Bowl week. The countdown continues to the game on Sunday, which you can hear right here on The Zone, courtesy of Westwood One. I'm Lucas Panzika, back for another day of positive vibes here on the Buck Rising Show with no Buck Rising, just the way we like it.
Is it a good morning?
Well, depends who you ask, Jackson. I know maybe you're not feeling so hot this morning. That's Jackson Williams on the other side of the glass. Because there is much to discuss, by the way, today. Ian Rappaport had some interesting things to say about Will Levis, his opinion of the Titans quarterback yesterday on 3HL. We'll talk about that. Bruce Feldman will join the show at 12:20 of Fox Sports. Mike Wilson coming up next to recap that Tennessee basketball win over Mizzou, the offensive explosion in the second half yesterday. We are also fueled by the best hot chicken in the world, Hattie B's, but we might as well start there. Jackson Williams was dragging coming in this morning because the LA Lakers have made another move. This one not exactly as stunning as Luka Doncic acquired from the Dallas Mavericks for Anthony Davis and some others. But our boy, Dalton Knecht, Jackson, has moved on from Los Angeles. A legendary run he had after being selected in the first round of the 2024 NBA draft. We'll always remember his time in LA.
Laker legend.
Going alongside LeBron James. And we will await his number 4 jersey being retired and hung in the rafters at Crypto. But yes, Shams reporting this was late yesterday, 11:15 Central Time. The LA Lakers are trading former Tennessee star, I added that parenthetically, Dalton Knecht, Cam Reddish, a 2031 already happened, unprotected first-round pick, and a 2030 pick swap to the Charlotte Hornets for center Mark Williams. Dalton, I mean, is he headed back home?
I heard Luka asked for this trade to happen. He couldn't have another superstar. He didn't want a third superstar with him and LeBron. He just wanted it to be them two. So
yeah, and that makes sense.
Dalton
no, it makes sense.
Off to Charlotte.
Really would have just taken the shine off of Luka and LeBron. Dalton probably would have ended up stealing the show in LA. So I understand this move.
I'm just more upset I don't get to scream Lake Show at Buck every time he brings up Dalton Knecht.
Well, I'm not going to stop you. But yes, Dalton Knecht, now a member of the lowly Charlotte Hornets.
Because if I combine Hornets with something that says show, it's going to sound very different to Lake Show.
And the only Charlotte Hornets coverage we've done on this radio show was the debacle on the court
PS5.
of them gifting a young child a PlayStation 5 in front of their crowd on the Jumbotron as a Christmas celebration, with a Santa giving this child a PS5 before taking it away from him as the cameras turned off and saying, oh, no, you were never actually getting the PlayStation. Here's a jersey instead. They did end up correcting that and giving the kid the PS5, but not until after they were raked over the coals by the public. That is the extent of the Charlotte Hornets coverage we've done on this show.
Buzz City.
Is that what they say?
Yes, that's what I will be yelling at Buck from now on.
Always been a Charlotte Hornets fan myself.
I can't do that.
Grant Williams, a member of the Charlotte Hornets, so Knecht joins a fellow VFL. And Brandon Miller, local guy. I got to cover him a little bit when he was a star at Cane Ridge. I know he went on to have 1 year at Alabama, a very successful year at Alabama. But I don't know, maybe a fun little trio brewing over there in Charlotte. So Dalton Knecht moves on. I guess that is how we open the show today. How about the NBA, by the way? Trade deadline is today, correct?
Yes.
The NBA taking some of the shine off the NFL during Super Bowl week. Like, Myles Garrett's doing the rounds, and he is in New Orleans currently. He spoke to several media outlets yesterday. We will play you some audio later in the show of what he had to say to the Rich Eisen show about requesting a trade from the Cleveland Browns. Without a doubt, the biggest news of the week on the NFL side of things. But the NBA kind of coming in here with the Luka Doncic stunner from last weekend, and then Jimmy Butler traded to the Warriors. I mean, this has got to be the one sport that the trade and the star power is something that everybody seems to pay attention to, but nobody's watching the games, right? Like, I get blindsided by these NBA trades. Oh, my, Jimmy Butler's going to Golden State. And I'm not going to watch a Warriors game. Not until the playoffs, right? Maybe not even until the conference finals if they get that far.
I'm going to watch Lakers-Pacers on Saturday.
Also, I have no desire to try to really grasp the NBA economics of how these trades work.
I don't understand it either. There's a first apron, a second apron, a novelty apron.
The Warriors, for example, get Jimmy Butler. The Heat get Andrew Wiggins, P.J. Tucker, and a protected first-round pick. The Pistons get Lindy Waters and Josh Richardson, another VFL. The Jazz get Dennis Schroeder. The Raptors get Kyle Anderson. What in the world? That is one trade, Jackson. That is one trade. I just named 5 teams and a multitude of players. Almost 10 players I just named in one trade. So, yeah, that's tough for me to wrap my head around. NBA trades will forever be the most confusing thing in sports and will forever be more interesting than the regular season.
Randomly getting Jalen Hood-Schifino in the Luka trade.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything.
Just throwing him in there. We are on 104.5 The Zone TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Agent S. reminds us LaMelo Ball also in Charlotte. Yeah, always been a Hornets fan. I think I've got some Hornets gear stashed away in the closet somewhere.
Buzz City.
This is a Buzz City show. 615-737-1045. Tyler says, are we a Hornets radio show now? We absolutely are. So, Tennessee basketball yesterday, 85-81 over Missouri. The Vols turned this thing on its head, down by 11 a few minutes into the second half, and then a few minutes later up by 14. I mean, this is as quickly as Tennessee has flipped a game as I can remember in recent memory. Tennessee outscoring Mizzou 57-47 in the second half, kind of left the door cracked a little bit late, allowed Mizzou to get a couple big shots and some unnecessary fouls. But in the end, Tennessee moves on to 19-4, 6-4 in conference play, 57 points in the second half. That's a season high. Tennessee has had games this season where they have not scored 57 points in 40 minutes. Just a couple weeks ago down at Auburn, Tennessee did not reach 57 points. I was impressed by Missouri in this game. They kind of took it to Tennessee in the first half. Vols had to scratch and claw to get the deficit to 6 going into halftime, but obviously had a fantastic second half offensively. 10 of 15 from three-point land, and Igor Milicic was the star for me in this one. Zakai Ziegler was phenomenal after missing a game with the knee injury, 21 points, 8 assists. He was perfect, 4 of 4 from three-point land, 7 of 7 from the free throw line when nobody else on Tennessee's roster seemed to be consistent hitting free throws. But Igor Milicic Jr. showed you exactly how he can help this team at its highest level. Going 2 of 3 from three-point land, 21 points on the day, secondary scorer for Tennessee. He was tied for the team lead, though, yesterday with Zakai Ziegler. Double-double, 10 rebounds, and had 5 assists. And how about 4 blocks for Igor Milicic Jr.? He was phenomenal in this game, outshining even Felix Okpara, who had a nice day, 12 points and 3 blocks of his own. Okpara, though, missing some easy layups around the rim that he has got to let go down. But Tennessee, 85-81 over Mizzou. Vols are 6-4 in conference play, and I hate that this was kind of my takeaway because this was a good win against a quality team, but the inconsistencies kind of maddening right now with this Tennessee team. I mean, you go from barely hanging 50 at Auburn, and you dragged Auburn into the mud with you a couple weeks ago, almost knocked off the number 1 team in the country. Incredible defensive performance down on the Plains. But then to turn around and the just weirdness of that Kentucky game, 11 of 45 from 3. We all understand how that went. Probably Tennessee's worst defensive performance of the season. And then from there, you go to the weekend, you rout Florida with maybe the best defensive performance of the season, following up your worst, and then raining it down from 3 against Missouri. Just up and down, and this feels like such a high-ceiling, high-floor basketball team. But if that team shows up in March, Tennessee's got a chance to make a run. But you're talking about going 66.7% from three-point land in that case, and I don't know how feasible that is.
What's really interesting about this Tennessee inconsistency, but they've scored more points in almost every SEC game. They've built on their previous one, starting with 43 at Florida, up to 51 at Auburn, 57 against Mizzou, 60 in the second half against Mizzou, 64 against Florida, 68 Mississippi State, 73, 74, 75, 76, 85.
There you go.
Interesting.
We'll see if Tennessee is hitting their stride offensively, and we'll talk to Mike Wilson about it of Knox News. He'll join us coming up next on 104.5 The Zone.
over a decade, and they're here to help you and help you clear up any misconceptions you may have about treatment if you're somebody who's experiencing ED. The sad reality is if you go to a doctor to seek treatment, things like irreversible surgery may be the only options that they have on offer. Do not go through irreversible surgery to treat ED before you've talked to the experts at the Tennessee Men's Clinic. They specialize in men's sexual health issues. It's all they do. It makes them the experts in the field. And they have access to multiple protocols and options to treat ED based on your specific needs and what's going on in your body. So don't trust your health to an online pharmacy and don't feel like you're out of options. We want you to understand all the options available for ED treatment. The Tennessee Men's Clinic protocols are patient-centered and customized to your needs. They have treatments for everything from low testosterone, ED, treatments that increase size, stamina, and everything else in between. So schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for their Franklin or Midtown location, or call them 615-208-9090.
Okay, this is amazing. As Mike Wilson joins us of Knox News, welcome back. I'm Lucas Panzica. We are fueled by Hattie B's and with you until 1 o'clock. So, Mike, it was discovered this morning that there is just an inventory of old-time video game themes stashed away in the computer back there in the control room. So we come back today with the GoldenEye theme, and we might be doing it all day, Jackson, if you want to just keep this going. So, first of all, good morning. Thank you. Good to talk to you. Do you have a favorite video game theme from your childhood? And if it's not GoldenEye, then why?
Yeah, GoldenEye Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball, because I'm 36 years old, therefore I grew up in the N64 era. I wasn't allowed video games as a child. I was deprived, loved, I don't know what you want to call that. I was forced to go outside and play sports and be active, but I did get to play N64 at friends' houses from time to time, and GoldenEye, absolutely electric factory.
Electric Factory is right. I'm with you, man. I didn't get a game console until like 8th grade, so most of my gaming had to be at friends' houses, and that was where a lot of my exposure came. So I'm with you on that. No Buck today. He said some really terrible things about you the last time you joined us. I thought it was a little extreme. He said, I never want to book that person as long as I'm in this studio, which I thought was just a little much. So I appreciate you doing this when he's not here.
That's the only reason I'm doing it. Buck, I don't even know who he is anymore.
Yeah, not many do. Very, very forgettable, Buck Rising. So it turns out all Tennessee had to do is shoot over 66% from three, Mike, to marry a championship contending defense to an offense that can carry them throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, pretty much that's it. Yesterday was kind of a weird game, but Tennessee basically has had weird games, I guess you'd say 5 in a row now. Probably 4. Mississippi State wasn't so weird, but that's kind of been the pattern. Tennessee played a really great defensive game despite losing at Auburn. It came back with a really great game against Florida. Got the order wrong. Anyway, they played a lot of ranked games in a row, but it's been very interesting how the patterns have been different. And yesterday's was very much the offense outperforming the defense against a really good Missouri offense.
Yeah, so the 5 straight against top 15 opponents, first time ever that has happened, much less 5 straight against top 25 opponents. The win over Mississippi State, the loss at Auburn, the loss at home to Kentucky, and then now back-to-back against Florida and Missouri. Where are you with, I'm kind of torn, Mike, between saying 3-2 in that stretch is good, and it's easy to be feeling good about this team after an 85-81 win over Mizzou, and they've stacked good performances against quality teams. But at the same time, the up and down of just that stretch alone and the variety of performances, I don't know if I should be concerned that the most recent ones have been what we've seen, 85 points in a home conference win, or if I should be more concerned about the inconsistencies.
Yeah, you would have liked to go 4-1 in that stretch, the Kentucky being the one, I think. You got to defend the home court right now in the SEC to kind of stay on top of things. And if Tennessee had won that one, they'd be 7-4 and be in third place in the SEC, opposed to gridlocked with about 40 teams with 6 wins. Tennessee's good. They're a lot like the team 2 years ago to me, and that's the comparison I keep coming back to. Such an elite defense, you're going to be in every game you play, except for apparently one in Gainesville. You're going to be in those games. They have more offensive firepower than that team, that team 2 years ago, the 22-23 team, which is what gives this team more upside. But it just hasn't necessarily pieced all those things together. Closest it's come was probably the Florida game when you only had 7 guys available. But they haven't really found the perfect recipe yet, which can be one of 2 things. Promising because the best basketball is out there, or concerning because you don't know if you're going to get it at some point.
Yeah, that Tennessee team managing to get to the Sweet 16 despite Zakai Ziegler going down late in the year with an ACL injury. Mike Wilson of Knox News, our guest. And Zakai's injury keeping him out of that Florida game over the weekend, Mike. He still gets, a good run in this game, 34 minutes. But I think, did we learn anything about how Jordan Gainey can operate running this offense? And if so, how does that maybe open things up for Tennessee offensively, just keeping that in mind and having seen the proof of concept?
Jordan Gainey certainly is the head of everything you talk about with the Florida game. But what I thought was really telling is I think Tennessee got to learn about every player on its roster in that game because they all had a reality. They couldn't get taken out of the game. Like the bench didn't have enough players for them to get pulled for a mistake. So I think you saw every one of those 7 players get a chance to go out and play their game in a free and worryless environment because Rick Barnes couldn't have the quick trigger to pull those guys out because he didn't have any other options. So you certainly got an elite performance from Jordan Gainey, and that's encouraging. You can throw Zakai Ziegler off ball. You might be able to rest him a couple more minutes than you usually have going into the later portion of the year. But yeah, you just saw a team get a chance to really put its players out there and put their best foots forward, I thought.
28 points in the first half, down 6 going into the break last night, and then 57 in the second, a season high. They've had multiple games where they haven't scored 57 for the entirety of the game this season. What went into the turnaround at halftime?
Yeah, two things. Rick Barnes basically spent halftime showing the guys film of the first few minutes of the first half and saying, hey, everything we told you was going to be there is there. You're just not taking advantage of it. And Tennessee did take advantage of it in the second half. Part two of that is they went to their best lineup. Jemai Maychak came out about a minute into the half after a turnover and a foul on a three-point shooter. Jordan Gainey came in. That group of Zakai Ziegler, Jordan Gainey, Chaz Lanier, Igor Milicic, and Felix Okpara outscored Missouri 32-16 in the following 8.5 minutes. That lineup absolutely torched Missouri. I think they were 12 of 18 shooting and 6 of 8 on three-pointers. That's Tennessee's best lineup right now. It certainly is its best lineup offensively, but I don't know that the drop-off defensively is massive analytically and statistically right now. That lineup is what really turned that game for Tennessee. They saw what they had missed in the first half. They made those plays in the second half, and they did it because they had their best lineup on the court.
Rick Barnes, after the Auburn game, talked about needing more from Tennessee's front line. It felt like they really got it last night. Igor Milicic, just phenomenal in this game. Double-double, 21 points, 5 assists, 4 blocks, all over the place, affecting the game from beyond the arc like he has at points this season. But overall, what are your takeaways from Tennessee's big men since Rick Barnes made those comments after the Auburn game?
Yeah, one other thing on the second half, too, last night, 1 turnover in the final 19 minutes. That changed everything, too, because Tennessee had 10 in the first 31 minutes. I thought that comment at Auburn was about Igor. Felix Okpara wasn't his best last night against Missouri, but I think he might be Tennessee's second most consistent player in SEC play behind Zakai Ziegler. I think he's been tremendous, great defensively. He isn't an offensive dynamo. He's not going to get you a ton of post-up points, but he does what he's good at. Cade Phillips, you know he's getting 2 to 3 lobs a game, so you know you're getting some points there. Igor, I think, is the guy that, does elevate the scoring at the rim, which is where Tennessee has struggled mostly this year. He can elevate that. And what you saw last night, I think, is the skill set that Tennessee knew it had coming in. Rebounds super well. He's a playmaker. He passes well. He cuts well, shoots the ball. He's a very interesting offensive player. One, I think, has a shot at the NBA just because he's 6'10" and so athletic with so many skills. That version of Igor is a ceiling raiser and a floor raiser at the same time for the Tennessee offense.
Mike Wilson with us of Knox News. Does this team have a path to its first ever 1 seed in the NCAA tournament in your mind?
It does. Problem is Auburn is seemingly locked in there, even though I think their back half of the SEC schedule is more loaded up. Because I think they've got 2 Alabama games out there on that schedule.
They have one. I believe they've played Bama already, and that's Bama's only conference loss.
There we go. So glad you're better than I am. So they've got another Bama game out there. That's on the schedule. And Bama is also ahead of Tennessee on that seed line. They have an Auburn game coming up as well. And Tennessee and Bama still have to play, and that only meeting is in Knoxville. There is a path to it. Unfortunately, I think it's similar to last year's situation that wound down in March, where Tennessee's probably playing for the 4th 1 seed because the ACC is sorry. Duke's going to end up with that 1 seed out of that conference because it's not a great conference, just like it wasn't in football. So Duke's probably going to steamroll to that. So is Tennessee going to be able to be a 3rd SEC team on the 1 seed line? Can they stay up enough and avoid taking a loss at an A&M or at Ole Miss late in the year? They should be in that conversation, but again, when you're playing for the 4th one, that's really hard because your margin's so thin.
Mike, you were right. I was wrong. Auburn still has yet to play Alabama. They're going to play them next Saturday, and then the regular season finale to close things out. And it is striking looking at Auburn's stretch the rest of the way here. As impressive as 9-0 in the first half of SEC play in this conference this year is, still number 6 Florida. That's coming up next Saturday. at number 3 Alabama, still to host number 25 Ole Miss, to travel to Kentucky, to travel to a top 10 Texas A&M, and to close out the regular season against Bama. I'm fascinated to see how Auburn handles that stretch.
Yeah, because Alabama's loss was to Ole Miss, right? That was their loss. Auburn's the best team in the country, and that's probably why Tennessee's performance there was so impressive. I mean, holding that offense to 53 points, playing the way they did in that environment, which is usually very good. That was so impressive. They are the best team. That schedule is going to test them. That schedule compares to what Tennessee just went through in the past 5 games. So how Auburn handles that's going to dictate a lot. But they're so clearly ahead of everyone on that 1 seed line that, again, that margin is different than what Tennessee's got as you're kind of competing for that 4th 1 seed. Because I think Joe Lenardi put on Twitter last night, if Tennessee lost to Missouri last night, they're right back off the 1 seed line. So, in essence, you're playing for it kind of every game right now.
Where are you right now with this team's ceiling versus its floor in the NCAA tournament? I know that's such a hard discussion to have, and I don't know if you're even one for those type of discussions, but if you had to throw something out there right now, given what you've seen in the last couple weeks.
Well, so before every game, one of the stories I have to do includes a score prediction. I got Kentucky wrong because I picked Tennessee to win. I got Florida wrong because I picked Florida to win. So this to say, I don't know right now which version of this Tennessee team is rolling up and where. It's really hard to predict for me. There's inconsistencies shooting the ball. I do think Tennessee's too reliant on the three-pointer, which is why last night was so interesting. They didn't take a lot of three-pointers, and they made the ones they took, which is very different from obviously we saw against Kentucky. This team strikes me as one that can make an Elite Eight run with its defense. It also could bounce out in the first weekend going 2 of 30 on three-pointers. So it's really hard to know right now. Again, and this is the cliche, but also the fact, matchups. Who are you going to get in the matchups? You go back to 21, Tennessee got paired up with an underseeded, super talented Michigan team and lost in the second round. It goes that way. That's how it's going to shake out sometimes. So you kind of got to see how the matchups fall. But Tennessee has the defense to keep it in games. It also needs to be able to make some shots. And as we talked about, scoring at the rim, that's a big deal. That's a pressure release on that perimeter offense.
Mike Wilson, our guest. Tennessee at Oklahoma Saturday before a 3-game stretch, including Kentucky on the road, Vanderbilt at home in a rematch, and then a road trip to Texas A&M. Is 13 teams in the NCAA tournament legitimately feasible to you at the moment? That's the number that feels like is getting tossed around.
It is. I mean, you need Vanderbilt to kind of cement itself a little bit because they put themselves in that group, obviously, with that Kentucky win and the Tennessee win, and then just absolutely melted down against Oklahoma, and you can't have that. So it is. It's in that mix, and heck, Arkansas might be putting itself back in the bubble conversation right now, too, after the Kentucky win and their win last night as well at Texas. LSU, South Carolina are the only two that really aren't in that conversation and are, frankly, quite horrid. So those two are out. But, yeah, you're talking about the rest of this conference at least being on the bubble to some extent. Someone's going to play themselves off it in the back half, whether that be Arkansas, whether that be Texas, because they've kind of struggled and not impressed me. But to have that many teams in the conversation in the first week of February is absolutely crazy.
At this point, with how much we've talked about the SEC and it being the best conference in basketball, and it doesn't seem necessarily close at the moment, like you said, with the weakness of the ACC currently, how much of a disappointment will it be if the national champion is not an SEC basketball team? I feel like have the whole regular season discussion falling flat on its face. Feels like it has to happen.
Well, it's got to happen after the football meltdown because this is a basketball conference now. Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, Auburn. You've got some elite teams that really have a shot to be there in that final weekend this year. And that's got to shake out. Last year was a little bit disappointing. Auburn bowing out as early as they did. Tennessee getting right on the brink there before losing to Purdue. Alabama obviously did it and got there, but Tennessee's in the mix, man. Alabama's in the mix. I'm high on Florida. I think they're tremendous, and that's why what Tennessee did to them in that 64-44 win was absolutely mind-blowing to hold that team to 44 points. So you want to see a team do that at some point and get to that stage, and the SEC has a wide enough net when you talk about how many teams are getting in that your odds are just inherently better to have a team that gets there.
What was your reaction to the Dalton Connect trade to Charlotte?
It seemed inevitable that Dalton was on the move, given the trade that just happened with Luka Doncic going to L.A. The Lakers needed a center. They were going to make a trade, and Dalton and draft picks were their best assets. So seemed like it was inevitable. I think it's nice for Dalton to be back closer to Knoxville. I think it's a bummer to go to that team because the Hornets are not good at basketball as the roster currently stands. Tough fit, too, because when Brandon Miller's back healthy and with two very ball-dominant guys, so curious how Dalton fits in that offense. But, heck, he's back closer to Knoxville, and he was going to be on the move, so maybe that's a good thing overall.
Are we willing to say that now you have the two best players of the Rick Barnes era of Tennessee basketball playing in the same place? Like, do Grant Williams and Dalton Connect stand alone in that conversation, or does Zakai Ziegler still have to be a part of that?
Yeah, I mean, Zakai is going to be in that conversation by the time his career is done here, obviously. But those two are the ones who won SEC Player of the Year, the only two under Rick Barnes to do it. So certainly for that alone, they are those guys and the highest scoring guys that Rick Barnes has had. So, I mean, Chaz Lanier, I guess, is going to be in that mix by the end of the year, too. But, yeah, the way that those guys had their careers at Tennessee, tremendous. And Grant Williams last night chimed in about Rocky Top on Twitter as soon as he saw the trade. So certainly it'll be a happy moment for two guys who did not play together but know what it's like to succeed here will now be together.
Yeah. Hard to believe we're a week away from first pitch, Tennessee baseball against Hofstra. What is the, preseason outlook at the moment as, most Tennessee fans are just now kind of coming around to checking in? Maybe a lot won't be checking in until May or so, but how are things looking at the moment as Tennessee gets ready to open things up for 2025?
Yeah, I mean, they've been going full steam over there for a good minute now on scrimmages. Been over there a good bit in the past week or so, kind of seeing what's going on. I think Tennessee knows who the offensive pieces are, where they're probably going to fall. I mean, the infield's loaded. You know who the outfield guys are. You know that Reese Chapman's probably got to establish himself as an X factor. I think they know 5 or 6 starting pitching options. I don't know that the opening weekend rotation will be the end-of-season rotation, given A.J. Russell will come back at some point. I think Tegan Coons and Brandon Arvidsson as new guys will have a say in that. But, yeah, I mean, the team looks absolutely loaded again with a real opportunity to get to Omaha.
Yeah, looking to defend a national championship. Mike, before we let you go, any Super Bowl thoughts for Sunday? Eagles or Chiefs?
Is that who was in it? I had absolutely no idea. I've watched approximately 36 seconds of the NFL this season.
Wow.
So, Sunday's like my only day off. So typically I try to not watch a whole lot that day. That said, I'm really sick of the Chiefs, like a lot of America, I think, because I have social media and I see the nonsense. So apologies to Tennessee basketball assistant coach Rod Clark, but I don't want the Chiefs to win this game.
All right, there it is. Mike Wilson of Knox News. Our guest, follow him at @ByMikeWilson on Twitter. Thanks, buddy.
Good, thanks for having me on. I do not like you, Buck.
Yes, I'll pass the message very gladly. Mike Wilson with us of Knox News on 104.5 The Zone. One of the best covering Tennessee basketball as the Vols are coming off a second straight win against a top 15 opponent. Like we said, at Oklahoma Saturday, that is an early tip-off, 11 a.m., that you can hear right here on The Zone, courtesy of the Vol Network. 615-737-1045. Sometimes it's jarring, Jackson, when you get people that are, covering it. Mike Wilson's not living in another world. He's 2.5 hours down the road, but just covering a different sport or in a different market, different space, to hear someone say they've watched about 36 seconds of the NFL this year, it feels so foreign to me.
What do you mean you haven't suffered like the rest of us?
615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Mark wants to talk Super Bowl 59. Hey, Mark. Mark, are you with us? All right, Mark's going with the Chiefs. Good stuff. Good pick.
Great point.
Yeah. All right.
I didn't think of that.
That has happened about 3 times in the last 2 days. Is it me? What's happening here?
I think people are just jarred that they're welcomed into the show rather than barked at.
Yeah, I like that. I think that is what it is. There is news in the world of college football. One head coach that has just been given a hefty extension. And on top of that, are spring games about to go away in the sport? One college football head coach seems to be trending in that direction. Multiple programs might be trending in that direction. We'll get to that coming up next on 104.5 The Zone.
Just like football, when it comes to your retirement planning, you better have a game plan. And Trajan Wealth is there for your free consultation. TRAJAN Wealth. Trajan Wealth is not just any financial firm. They're your partners in securing your financial future, because your financial future can give you stress. If the questions are keeping you up at night, like, do I have enough money for when I retire? When should I start to draw from Social Security? Hell, I checked my retirement fund just the other day out of curiosity to see what I have saved and if I need to up my contribution and things like that. We all have had those questions at some point in our careers. Trajan Wealth is there to help you through it. They're a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience in retirement planning and wealth management work for you. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and your peace of mind as a result. So call them today at 615-270-5000. That's 615-270-5000, or visit them online at TrajanWealth.com. That's TrajanWealth.com. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement.
What video game, Jackson?
This is MVP Baseball that Mike Wilson mentioned at the beginning of his segment.
All right, we're doing video game bumper music for the rest of the show. If you missed it during our conversation with Mike Wilson, we have discovered that there is a large inventory of video game music stashed away in the control room. We came back with GoldenEye, which is indisputably the best of all time, right? The GOAT of video game music. Mm-hmm.
I'm also planning on saving a couple and sprinkling them in tomorrow to really confuse Buck.
Mm-hmm. Good.
It's going to be a fun time.
We'll do that. Well, we know what the greatest hot chicken of all time is, as voted by the Nashville scene during Hot Chicken Week. Of course, it's Hattie B's. It's who we are fueled by. And you also know that big games need big wings. So say goodbye to football in the most delicious way possible. Bring a bucket and win the watch party on Sunday. 24 jumbo flats and drums, $35. Order ahead, HattieB.com. Download the Hattie B's app. By the way, if you download the app, you get a free dessert just by downloading the app. Peach cobbler, banana pudding, whatever it might be. It's all scratch made and incredible. Order ahead, any heat level. Again, 24 jumbo flats and drums, $35. Bring your big wing bucket to your watch party on Sunday, courtesy of Hattie B's. That's what I'll be doing Sunday for the game. 615-737-1045. Before we get to this college football news of a head coach getting an extension, let's go back to Mark to talk Super Bowl.
Hey, y'all, my apologies. My wife was on the other line.
No, we can't go blaming the wife, Mark. Come on, man.
She was. But look, man, back in 2011, the last time the Steelers made it to the Super Bowl, and it was a big deal that year because Wiz Khalifa had the song Black and Yellow, Black and Yellow, Black and Yellow. But guess who shut that Black and Yellow up? Aaron Rodgers. Now, what if this guy comes here and he mentors Cam or Shador? I don't want to make my pick, but what if he mentors either one of them? And or what if we get a trade with Pittsburgh and get Watt and also Fields? And I hang up.
Thanks for the call, Mark. Look, the Titans likely are going to bring in a veteran quarterback. There is a reality in which Aaron Rodgers, purely based on football, on talent level alone, is your best option. That is a reality. Aaron Rodgers is also under contract for 2025 with the New York Jets. Does anybody expect Rodgers to be a Jet in 2025? No, not necessarily. Aaron Glenn was not willing to say anything about it for obvious reasons during his introductory press conference as the new Jets head coach after coming over from calling the defense for the Detroit Lions. But if Aaron Rodgers comes available, he very well could be your best option. Derek Carr is under contract in New Orleans. Kirk Cousins is under contract in Atlanta. In terms of the free agents, you're talking about Sam Darnold, who could easily get tagged, who could easily remain in Minnesota after winning them 14 games last season. When's the last time the Vikings won 14 games? I know how the season ended, but I think we're all acting like Sam Darnold's just going to be ripe for the picking, just going to be there for the taking for any NFL team that needs a quarterback. Feels like a gamble for the Vikings to roll with unproven J.J. McCarthy coming off an injury as opposed to the quarterback that just won them 14 games. So, Mark, I think a lot of people are going to scoff at the Rodgers thing, and for very good reasons. The question is, will the Titans want to deal with the headache that is Aaron Rodgers? Because he has brought a headache to his last couple of stops. Obviously, there was a relationship there with Chad Brinker, the president of football ops, who was in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. But there is going to be a veteran quarterback I think we would expect in Tennessee next year. Aaron Rodgers could easily be the most talented option out there.
That was the highest Vikings regular season win total in their history. The only one
17-game season.
15-1 in 1998 with Randy Moss, his rookie year.
So it wasn't the highest win.
I said second highest.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said highest. My fault. So Randy Moss, the last time the Vikings won 14 or more games in a regular season, Randy Moss was on the team. That tells you what Sam Darnold did for them.
Who was the quarterback?
In 2024. Culpepper?
Randall Cunningham.
Wow. Good call back. We are on 104.5 The Zone TV. 615-737-1045 is also how you jump in. The F&M Bank chat is getting involved. Derek says, the only quarterback I want on my team less than Aaron Rodgers is Deshaun Watson. And I get that opinion. I do. And look, I'm probably good on the Aaron Rodgers experiment. the way that it crashed and burned, because the Jets have been doing the draft, develop, retain thing that the Titans want to do. They just thought Rodgers would be the catalyst. The Jets have drafted well. The Jets have a talented roster. And it has cratered in New York with Aaron Rodgers. So I get where you're coming from, Mark. And obviously there is a scenario where he's the most talented option, but we'll see if the Titans are willing to go that route, because you take everything that comes with it. Ohio State head coach Ryan Day has agreed to a new extension, a 7-year contract that will keep Day as the coach of the Buckeyes through the 2031 football season, and it'll add 3 years onto his current agreement. It is valued at $12.5 million in total annual compensation. That is from Pete Thamel of ESPN. So Ryan Day, now officially the second highest paid coach in all of college football, coming off of that national championship. How many more losses to Michigan before Ohio State fans want him fired again?
One.
I mean, I can't
They could
wait.
win the national championship again, lose to Michigan again, and see what happens.
They are going to Michigan in 2025, and I am just sitting here patiently waiting to hear the discourse from Ohio State fans if they lose to Michigan yet again, that it was all because of Chip Kelly, and it was all because of Jim Knowles calling the defense, and Will Howard, and these wide receivers, and they're not all going to be gone. Jeremiah Smith, Cardinal Tate coming back. Igbuka will be an NFL player next year. But there will be a quarterback competition happening at Ohio State. But that is going to be the discussion in Columbus if the Buckeyes do not beat Michigan. It's insane. I thought it was insane after this past year, and we saw what happened. But Ryan Day, a highly compensated man, $12.5 million per year. But will Ohio State have a spring game? Because it's seeming like multiple...
Yeah, but I'll be honest.
Oh, that was Matt Rule. We're going to get to that audio here in just a second. What happened?
Oopsie.
What? No oopsies, all right? The oopsies are for Buck. I don't want any... Let's not do any oopsies. That was Nebraska head coach Matt Rule when asked about if Nebraska will have a spring game. Now he can play it.
Honestly, I highly doubt it, and I think it's really fundamentally. I hate to say it like this. It's really because, last year we're one of the more televised. We were one of the more televised spring games, and I dealt with a lot of people offering our players a lot of opportunities after that. So to go out and bring in a bunch of new players and then showcase them for all the other schools to watch, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's just absolute free, open, common market, and so I don't necessarily want to open up to the outside world. I don't want these guys all being able to watch our guys and say, "Wow, he looks like a pretty good player. Let's go get him." So, but I don't know yet. I don't know anything. I thought it was important that we at least started to broach that subject of it not being televised. Yet at the same time, I do want to show off our players in some way. So, what exactly it'll be yet? I have not worried about anything other than recruiting right now, both the portal and into the 26 class. So now I have to kind of turn my attention to all those things.
That's Nebraska head coach Matt Rule saying he highly doubts Nebraska will have a spring game. And he's right. Everything he's saying is right. And I hate that he's right, but he is. And 247 Sports reported this out of Austin as well, that Texas coach Steve Sarkisian reportedly is still thinking about how he wants to structure the Longhorn spring football schedule, including the possibility of no spring game. Now, the reason cited in this article, and this is sources talking to the 247 Sports outlet in Austin, not Steve Sarkisian coming out and saying it the way Matt Rule just did. But the reason being cited here is not so much about potential tampering, but about concern from Sark about the wear and tear on his returning players following a 16-game schedule in 2024 that obviously started in August and finished in the semifinals, one game short of the national championship in that loss to Ohio State. Coaches are right in thinking this way, right? And look, spring games are not this end-all, be-all, but I do think it's yet another thing that fans lose out on because of the current state of college football. Think about the disarray that we're in right now, that coaches are having to consider not having a spring game, or at least not a public one, out of concern for young players getting plucked from their program. Because what is a spring game for, right? They've been through the spring practices. It's for the fans. It's for the fans. And yeah, it's great to have a player in a game environment, but these games are hardly actual four-quarter games anymore. Do you remember what Butch Jones used to do, Jackson, with the just crazy convoluted point system that if you got a third down stop, it was 2 points for the white team. And if you
I don't understand
like a
spring game
15-yard completion would be 3 points for the orange team. It's just ridiculous. But these games are very rarely actual games. They're for the fans. They're for fans to see the recruiting class and see these freshmen and see who might maybe rise up the depth chart in the fall. And typically the stars of a spring game are not going to be the stars of the upcoming season, but it gives fans information. I remember how excited Tennessee fans were to see Nico Iamaleava's first good play in a spring game, a sideline pass roped to Ethan Davis, and Tennessee fans are salivating over it. Braylon Staley flashed last year at Tennessee spring game. That's how most Vols fans know who the wide receiver is, and that's a guy that could make an impact in this room in 2025. It's yet another thing that fans lose out on because of this current state of disarray. It's Penn State fans having to deal with the fact that their backup quarterback, Bo Pribula, who has played significant snaps for them, has played in certain packages, has helped Penn State win games, is forced to enter the portal and leave his team in the middle of the playoff because he's not going to start next year, and that's his only option to find a good landing spot for 2025. Fans continue to pay the price for these things, and I don't blame Matt Rule for saying he highly doubts they're going to have a spring game out of worry for tampering. It's a shame, but that's where we're at the moment. Super Bowl 59 coming up on Sunday. Who has the better roster between Eagles and Chiefs? We'll go through it coming up next on 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11:01. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. The Vols men's basketball team added another ranked win last night as they took down 15th ranked Missouri 85-81 at Food City Center. Zakai Ziegler and Igor Milicic back in the lineup, and they led the Vols in scoring 21 apiece. Vols improved to 19-4 on the season and 6-4 in SEC play. In former Vols news, the Los Angeles Lakers are trading Dalton Knecht, Cam Reddish, and a 2031 unprotected first-round pick and a 2030 pick swap to the Charlotte Hornets for center Mark Williams. Knecht now paired with another former Vol in Grant Williams. NFL announced yesterday they will play a regular season game in Melbourne, Australia in 2026 in what will be the first game of a multi-year commitment to play there. Rams are expected to play in the first NFL game ever in Australia. As the designated home team in Australia in 2026, the Rams will play their games at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Super Bowl 59, Sunday afternoon, Eagles and Chiefs, Kansas City. 1.5-point favorites as they pursue a three-peat. Never been done before in NFL history. Are we operating under the assumption that the Chiefs are the team under the most pressure here? That the Chiefs are and should be the favorites? That the Chiefs are just going to win another Super Bowl because they are inevitable? Jackson, is that how this show is operating?
That they're under the most pressure? I don't know, man. Do you really want to go back to Philadelphia, having lost to them again?
Yeah, the context.
I think that pressure on the Eagles is just as large.
It's a good point. The context of the Philadelphia market is important. If the Chiefs are to lose, you know.
Boo-hoo.
Yeah, exactly. If the Eagles are... Yeah, we saw how quickly that fan base fell out of favor, or how quickly Andy Reid fell out of favor with that fan base, despite all the success he had in Philly, but the inability to win a Super Bowl for the Eagles. Chiefs are the favorites, and they should be. But who has the better roster, top to bottom? We're going to go position by position here, and there's a couple that we can just breeze through, right, in terms of who has the edge. For example, at quarterback, Jalen Hurts versus Pat Mahomes. Edge Chiefs. At running back, the duo of Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt versus Saquon Barkley, edge Eagles. Saquon averaging over 147 rush yards per game in the playoffs. He's averaging 6.7 yards per carry through 3 games in the postseason. Just
absurd.
Ridiculous. Wide receiver, Xavier Worthy, DeAndre Hopkins, and Hollywood Brown versus A.J. Brown.
Don't forget Juju Smith-Schuster.
Devontae Smith. Hey, Juju Smith-Schuster's popped up in Super Bowls before for the Chiefs. You're right.
He's their third receiver over Hopkins on this depth chart I'm looking at.
You know, there is just something that makes me say DeAndre Hopkins is going to pop up as a major X factor in this game for the Chiefs. I don't know why. I just have this feeling that DeAndre Hopkins is going to have one of his biggest games as a Chief in the Super Bowl.
And he's going to play so many snaps, it's going to reach the threshold.
I don't know about that.
He's going to play 3 games worth of snaps in one.
D-Hop what do you think is D-Hop's most productive performance in their first 2 playoff games? I'll ask you this. How many catches do you think Hopkins has in the playoffs for the Chiefs?
8.
1.
He has 1 catch?
1 catch. He's been targeted 3 times. No catches against Houston. 1 catch for 11 yards against Buffalo.
I guess that makes sense. I was about to say, I have not noticed him at all watching all these playoff games.
He has 4 touchdowns for the Chiefs since the trade from the Titans. He immediately popped his second game with the Chiefs, that overtime win over Tampa at 86 yards, 2 touchdowns, probably his biggest performance. His season high in yards, 90 against the Raiders. That was Thanksgiving weekend. But since that 90-yard performance, D-Hop hasn't had more than 37 receiving yards in a game for the Chiefs, and I just get this feeling that DeAndre Hopkins is going to smash that in the Super Bowl. But we'll see.
Do you know what his prop is at?
I don't. We can look that up. Do you mind looking that up? DeAndre Hopkins.
I will.
Prop from FanDuel Sportsbook. So at wide receiver, are we going with Worthy, Smith-Schuster, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, or A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson? I'm going to say edge Eagles here. Edge Eagles at the wide receiver position.
Yes, they have the X factor receiver that the Chiefs just don't have.
Tight end. Travis Kelce versus Dallas Goedert. Goddard's been good in these playoffs.
Am I crazy for saying Dallas Goedert?
I think it has to be Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce in the playoffs.
The body of work.
Chiefs.
The body of work, yes. But in the playoffs, I think Dallas Goedert's been better.
I have to give it. You can go Dallas Goedert. I have to give the edge to the Chiefs here. When it comes to Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl, it's really hard, really hard for me to say the edge at tight end is not on the side of the Chiefs. Offensive line. So the Philadelphia O-line is banged up. You've got two interior guys that say they're going to play. Landon Dickerson with a knee injury, Cam Jurgens with a back injury. These are easily two top 10 offensive lines in the NFL. A lot of the metrics have them right next to each other. On the Eagles' healthiest day, I think the Eagles have the better offensive line. But in this game, I'm rolling with the Chiefs, who are just healthier, who don't rely as much on the athleticism, the amount of pulling that the Eagles' offensive line does, and just coming into this game with a bit of a limp. I have no doubt those guys are going to play. They're going to gut it out. But I think I'm going to go Chiefs on the offensive line. The Chiefs' offensive line, contrary to popular belief, does not get the credit that it deserves. On defense, defensive end, outside linebacker. Both teams are excellent against the run. Eagles have more sacks this season. They have a higher sack rate. Chiefs have generated more pressures this season. I think the Eagles' defensive line has an edge in athleticism that the Chiefs don't necessarily have. And I'm including outside linebackers here. The Eagles also have allowed just over 105 rush yards per game in the playoffs, which is almost exactly their regular season average of 104.4, which is top 10 in the league. Chiefs have given up a lot of rush yards in these playoffs. That's a big emphasis going in here, right? The Chiefs have allowed just under 300 rush yards in 2 games in the postseason after they averaged allowing only 106.7 all year long, which ranked 9th in the NFL. I'm going to go Eagles here, just based on the way that they've played in this postseason. Off-ball linebacker. When you look at Philadelphia, you look at Oren Burks, Jeremiah Trotter, even with the injury to Nakobe Dean. And I know Nick Bolton had a huge performance against the Eagles in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. But I think the Eagles, just the front seven in general, is younger and more athletic than it was 2 years ago against the Chiefs. Inside linebacker, I give the edge to the Eagles. Defensive backs. I think the Eagles are more spread out in terms of their talent. I'm going Eagles. I know the Chiefs have Trent McDuffie, who might be the best corner in this game. I give the edge to the Eagles in the defensive backfield. Special teams, I think you got to go Chiefs. Jake Elliott has been a question mark. 9 of 12 on PATs in the playoffs. Eagles kicker Jake Elliott. Did you ever find DeAndre Hopkins?
Yes, it is set at 11.5.
Ooh.
And it is his longest reception prop is 8.5.
Oh, now that's intriguing.
I'm interested.
That is intriguing for D-Hop. His only catch went for 11 yards in these playoffs. That is intriguing for DeAndre Hopkins in Super Bowl 59. So special teams edge, Chiefs. So by my count, I have the Eagles 5, Chiefs 4. When you go position by position. And it's not a bold opinion that the Eagles have a better roster, right? That's a pretty uniform opinion, I think.
Yeah, they just don't have the better quarterback.
You know what the most impressive thing is about this dynasty with the Chiefs? Just the difference in how they've gone about it every year. It's just insane.
Yeah, their first title they won with a ton of X-factor players.
2018, the Chiefs were number 1 in the NFL, 425.6 yards per game. Patrick Mahomes, obviously the MVP in his first year as a starter. 2024, number 16 in the NFL, middle of the pack in yards per game. It's their ability to win in the margins that's only gotten better year over year, regardless of what their play style is. Tyreek Hill out the door, no problem. Defense steals the show the last 2 years. Pat Mahomes has had the worst statistical season of his career in 2024, yet here they are, 17 straight wins in one-score games, an NFL record. I saw Kyle Brandt of NFL Network talking about this the other day. If you're the Eagles going into this game, is it just hovering over you that you can't make a mistake? You just can't. Eagles did that 2 years ago. They lost by 3 to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, 38-35. Second quarter, Eagles had the lead, driving the ball, scoop and score, touchdown by Nick Bolton. Swung the game. Jalen Hurts fumble.
That's how we'll talk about the game. They can't think like that.
Sure. But it's just amazing. Because the thing is, the Chiefs can make a mistake. They'll get over it. Chiefs are the only team in these playoffs to lose in turnover margin and still win a game. They've coughed up one turnover in these playoffs. Eagles have coughed up none. So if you're asking what this game will come down to, I mean, I'm just going to fall back on the Super Bowl that happened 2 years ago and say turnovers. That's what happened. Scoop and score by Nick Bolton in the second quarter. 7-point swing. Eagles lose by 3 in the end. Almost happened twice. There's a screen pass to Devontae Smith in the second half that was fumbled. Nick Bolton scoop and score and ended up being reviewed and called an incomplete pass. Right there on the margins. That was a call that went against the Chiefs 2 years ago.
Well, that was 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago. So maybe it's a cop-out, but that's where it comes down. I mean, that's what it comes down to for me. Every game in these playoffs have come down to turnover margin with the exception of Chiefs-Bills. Now, you don't count turnover on downs as official turnovers, and the Bills had those against the Chiefs. But it just has to be such a daunting thing. And that's why it's so hard for me to pick against the Chiefs in this game. The Eagles have not turned the ball over, but it doesn't have to be a turnover. It can be a missed extra point. Eagles have missed 3 in these playoffs, right? It can be one missed assignment. It can be a drop. Chiefs will make you pay for it. They'll get over their mistakes, but they make it just about impossible for you to get over yours when you're playing against them. We'll see what happens. Eagles have the better roster. I think everybody's on the same page with that. Yet, most people here picking the Kansas City Chiefs, and for good reason.
They just feel inevitable.
They sure do. Coming up next, we've got headlines. A lot going on. As much as the NBA tries to steal the NFL's shine, plenty of headlines to come from Radio Row in New Orleans. That's next on 104.5 The Zone.
It's time for NFL Headlines with Lucas Panzica.
Myles Garrett continues to be the hot topic at Radio Row in New Orleans. By the way, tune in later on, 3 o'clock, as 3HL talks with tons of special guests that you won't hear anywhere else today and tomorrow. Finishing out their time, broadcasting live from New Orleans at Radio Row. Coverage brought to you by Low T Center and Rude, who is proud to partner locally with MJ Frick. For more info or to listen on demand, you can visit 1045thezone.com, download the 1045 The Zone app. Tons of great guests on 3HL this week down in New Orleans. I don't know if Myles Garrett's going to be one of them. He's making the rounds. He's a tough get down there. Myles Garrett has spoken for the first time about his trade request to the Cleveland Browns. He joined the Rich Eisen Show. Was his first stop. Apparently came right off the plane, straight to Radio Row, and right onto the set of the Rich Eisen Show. And he reiterated what he is looking for in his next team. This was Garrett with Rich Eisen.
Browns, all they got to do is just make him the richest guy at the position in the game. And he'll go back and he'll be a Brown, and that's the end of that. How do you respond to that? Where this is something that can be bridged, fixed, and you can stay with the Cleveland Browns. How do you respond to that?
I said I don't care about the money. I just want to win the championship. Now, is it something that maybe they end up keeping me, or saying that they're not taking any offers? That's a possibility. But I just want people to know that it's not about me being the highest paid non-quarterback, or me having a huge contract or any of that. I want to say, at the end of the season, I played in the biggest games that I won at the end of my career. And I had a chance to display my talent and everything I had. And, it all came to fruition. Everything that I dreamed and everything that I hoped for.
The more Myles Garrett talks, the more it sounds like he sat down with the Browns. And he said this. I listened to the entire interview on the Rich Eisen Show. He said he sat down with the team doing exit interviews. He made it clear how they felt. And then a couple weeks go by after the end of the NFL regular season, the end of the Browns season, and he's having to go public with this, publicly putting pressure on the organization, saying that he wants out, that he wants to be traded. It is more and more obvious to me every time he speaks that Myles Garrett did not get the response, the reaction he was hoping for from the organization when he told them that he wanted to trade. And the organization's been steadfast in that publicly, that they don't want to let him go. GM Andrew Berry has been directly asked, what about multiple first-round picks? Would you take 2 first-round picks for Myles Garrett? He quickly shot it down, said absolutely not. I believe it. I don't think that's just posturing. Will this end up happening? Probably, because it's hard to put this thing back together. It really is. Once you take it public, are they past the point of no return? That's probably just a question for Myles Garrett. But Jay on the F&M Bank chat says, screw Myles Garrett for what he said regarding the Titans. Yeah, did you see this? He didn't say anything regarding the Titans. And in all honesty, I didn't hear the clip, but Myles Garrett, he was on a certain show on Radio Row where they were showing him teams, and he was naming players on those teams, and he could not name a player on the Titans. My friend Jordan DeJani of CBS Sports tweeted this out. He was on CBS Sports HQ. He came up blank when they showed him a Titans logo. But
fair.
Look, again, I don't think we have to reiterate this conversation. Myles Garrett's not coming to Tennessee. He's not coming to Tennessee. And there is, stop it. There's another star defensive player that we'll talk about here in a couple minutes that I think if the Titans are going to have any interest in trading for a star defensive lineman, that maybe that's the guy they should call about, but we'll get to that here in just a second. Myles Garrett also told Rich Eisen that he has spoken to LeBron James for advice. Obviously, there are some parallels there from LeBron leaving Cleveland to pursue a championship. Obviously, full circle, came back, won it for the Cavs.
General front office ineptitude.
Mm-hmm. But later in the interview, Garrett is asked in so many words by Rich Eisen, what if they just don't want to trade you? This was Myles Garrett.
What if question, but what if the Browns say no? We want you to stay. We want you to be part of this thing. We do believe in the plan that we have. We do believe that this plan will work. We do need you to help this plan work, and you do have 2 years left. Like, what if that happens, Miles?
I mean, it's possible. No, they could do that, but that's a little bit further down the line that I'm willing to look. I know things have changed, night by night, and I'm sure people are calling and hopefully making some tempting offers. But I'm grateful for my opportunity, and I know that recently no one stuck to one team, seeing Luka. So
he sounds hopeful.
He's like, please, God, somebody get me.
He has been asked by multiple outlets. He'll sit down with ex-Commanders outlet, and they're saying, oh, well, what about the Commanders? Would you want to come play for the Commanders? And he said, yeah, there's a role I could play there. He's asked about coming to play for the Eagles. He is selling this. He is publicly putting the pressure on Cleveland here.
Have you ever seen anything like this? I can't think of a player doing interviews, basically just he's open to anything other than Northeast Ohio.
Yeah. A player of his caliber?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, that I
think it's something only a player of his caliber can do.
Yes. You're probably right about that. The other case would be a quarterback. And we've seen quarterbacks want out of certain situations. I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback.
Did Aaron Rodgers do this?
Rodgers has always had kind of his own way of doing things. I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback doing the car wash. Almost, borderline campaigning for his team to trade him when it's clear their heels are dug in as well.
Fans, tell your GM to call my agent.
It's clear the Browns are trying to sell what they're building to Myles Garrett, and he is not buying it. So this is fascinating. I saw Diana Rossini tweet that she talked to one NFL executive that said this could get messy in the next couple weeks. This is going to drag out. But Myles Garrett doing the rounds at Radio Row. Another star defensive player, guy who actually had more sacks than Myles Garrett in 2024. Doing the rounds in New Orleans. Trey Hendrickson, Bengals star pass rusher, joined the Pat McAfee show and made it clear what he wants out of this offseason.
I think the offseason is a good spot to kind of address these kind of issues that do come up. And during the season, when you're talking about OTAs or camp, you don't want to become a distraction for the team because inevitably the goal is to win a Super Bowl for Cincinnati. What that looks like this season, if it's something that we can agree on in terms, that would be great. Ideally, my wife and I would love to stay in Cincinnati. If it's something that helps the Bengals win a Super Bowl, if they get picks or anything like that, I want to help win a Super Bowl for Cincinnati if I'm there or not.
Okay, interesting because Duke is speaking about it now. Duke Tobin, general manager for the Cincinnati Bengals. He was out at the Senior Bowl and he chit-chatted about it. And I don't even think we really were like, oh, Trey, there is a situation because everything's on the offensive side. So going forward, this is something you have to experience and live life with right now. This is a part of your life right now, having to deal with what the future looks like.
I would have preferred to kind of heard it differently than my dad texting me a tweet. That would have been great to kind of figure it out that way. But, obviously the table is being set in that way. But I love to play football. I love for my play to do the talking. And at the end of the day, I think the chips will fall where they're going to be. And like I said, whatever happens, I want to win a Super Bowl for Cincinnati.
I love how Trey Hendrickson is spinning that, by the way. Whatever happens, I want to win a Super Bowl for Cincinnati. Whether that's me staying here and getting extended, or that's me helping Cincinnati win a Super Bowl by getting draft picks for me.
Ball's in your court, guys. All I want is for you guys as fans to be happy, but the evil organization may not want it, but I want you to be happy.
Oh, man.
Pretty great. That's a great PR move.
That is something I have not seen. Hey, listen, I'm just in it for the Bengals to win a championship. Whether that means I'm here or they're getting picks for me that help them win that championship. Like Trey Hendrickson will be traded to, who knows? We'll say the Commanders. They keep getting brought up for Myles Garrett. He gets traded to Washington, and he's a Washington player just rooting on the Cincinnati Bengals. Right?
He's inactive for a game for whatever reason. He's wearing Bengals gear on the Commanders sideline.
Yeah.
Just want him to win a Super Bowl, man.
But I like it, though. It's a smart play. I really think it is.
Such a good play.
And the quote that Pat McAfee referenced there with Hendrickson by Bengals GM Duke Tobin from the Senior Bowl. Pat didn't read it there in that clip. He had it up on a graphic. It was, quote, from Duke Tobin. We can't have guys at the top of the payroll in every position, right? We'll do what we can. We'll do what we feel is right, and we will try to get Trey re-signed. It's not giving anybody an extension. It's agreeing with somebody on an extension. Okay, so Trey Hendrickson, who, by the way, had 17 and a half sacks last year, led the NFL. He's 30 years old. He's had back-to-back years now of 17 and a half sacks. And he's not the only one in Cincinnati in this type of position. He's far from it. He is saying he either wants to be extended for top-of-market money or traded by the Bengals. Okay, T. Higgins played 2024 on the franchise tag. He might be the best free agent available. He'll be a free agent come the start of the new league year in March. Jamar Chase is entering his fifth-year option. He'll make over $21 million in 2025, but obviously he is seeking a long-term deal. Oh, and he just won the Triple Crown as a wide receiver. Mike Gesicki, pending free agent. Bengals tight end. So now you've got Joe Burrow doing the rounds. Talking about wanting to hold everything together. This is Burrow with ESPN, Shannon Sharp and company, talking about wanting Trey Hendrickson back and wanting to get the band back together for 2025.
Need to give him what he's worth and what he deserves. He's earned that. And we need our young guys to come on. We need to draft well. We need guys to come in and produce immediately. Yes. We don't have time to wait around. Right. And I think we have the young guys that are capable of going into an off season, training the way that they need to, taking advantage of all the opportunities that they can, and come out and play well early.
I have to confess, I'm very worried about you with what you're saying. We got to keep Jamar Chase. We got to keep T. Higgins. We got to keep Trey Hendrickson. You got to keep a whole bunch. This is Cincinnati now. I mean, this is that ownership. You confident that they're going to be willing to keep all of those guys?
The cap is going up each year. We just got new TV deals, so the cap's going to continue to go up.
TV money, yep.
And, we all want to stay together, so we're all going to do what it takes to do that. And, we have great players that have done great things and deserve to be paid. They're going to be paid what they're worth, whether we do it or somebody else. I hope we do it. I think, we've had the discussions that the guys are going to get paid that need to get paid. And so it's a big offseason for the Bengals.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to.
It sure is. I love this. Players are using their platform right now
in a way that hasn't been seen before.
Yeah, and Joe Burrow is jumping in on it. Says, no, we need to run it back with Trey Hendrickson, with Jamar Chase, with T. Higgins. Stephen A. makes a pretty good point.
That was such an interesting question from Stephen A.
Yeah, it was a very interesting exchange. And he makes a good point. The Bengals have not been that organization over the years. Bengals have serious star power right now. And a serious conundrum to look at in terms of having to pay all of these guys. If you're a Bengals fan and you hear that from your franchise quarterback, then you're all in, right? Kick that can. Who cares? Get all these guys in here. Manipulate the cap however you have to. If you have to sacrifice a Mike Gesicki, so be it.
Win a championship.
And we all know the Bengals defense was what held them back from going to the postseason in 2024, despite Joe Burrow having an MVP caliber season. Al Golden hired as defensive coordinator. He has replaced the fired Lou Anarumo, who is now, by the way, the defensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts. He comes to the AFC South. Very accomplished DC now in this division. But there's just some interesting positioning happening right now with all of those figures in the Bengals organization. And
how would you balance trying to fix up the defense while also trying to keep all these guys? Because you had all these guys, but it wasn't good enough.
Brinkerhead on the FNM Bank chat says, Bengals owner ain't paying. Yeah, look, I'm not going to begin to pretend like I know the ins and outs of the Bengals' needs on the defensive side of the ball. I know that was an aging defensive roster. I know that they had injuries throughout the course of the year. But it would feel like a mistake to let Trey Hendrickson walk. That's another guy that they kind of tried to kick the can on. They've kicked the can on all these guys. Trey Hendrickson signed a 1-year deal with Cincinnati.
They've put themselves in a really bad position having these three huge cornerstone players that they have to re-sign.
Yeah, they tagged Higgins. They exercised the fifth-year option on Jamar Chase, which is going to be in 2025. It'll be his fifth year with the franchise. So interesting times to come for the Bengals, who find themselves in a situation that they might have to do something they are not known for, and that's spending big on their own guys. We'll see if they do it. I'd say if you're in a Super Bowl window, it's pretty worth it.
It's the three-pronged process that Chad Brinker and the Titans are trying to implement right now. Draft, develop, retain. You have to retain.
Yeah, the retain part is what the Bengals are working on. Moving on, the NFLPA says no to an 18-game schedule. NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howell Jr. pushed back on Commissioner Roger Goodell's statement this week that safety data does not discourage expanding the regular season. During the NFLPA's annual news conference Wednesday, Howell Jr. said, quote, frankly, we're not sure how he's reaching that conclusion. Based on the data we've been given access to, no one wants to play an 18th game. No one. 17 games is already, for many of the guys, too long. So both sides here have said any discussions about an 18-game season have been informal, and it would have to be voted on. It would have to be agreed to by owners and players in the next CBA, which expires after the 2030 season. So I don't know when we get to 18 games. It does feel like a when. These things typically lead to when and not if in the NFL. But I think I'm with Lloyd Howell Jr. on this one, that I'd love to see the data that shows you that 18 games would actually help player safety. I don't know about that one. But this is something that's going to happen.
What, 50, 60 hits a season?
Yeah, this is something that is
I think you have to implement an extra bye week. 20-week season, 18 games, 2 byes.
Right. You would obviously be taking away a preseason game and adding a regular season game. 2 preseason game, 18 regular season games. My question is, will the product suffer over it? Will the injury wear and tear lead to the product taking the hit on this? Because I don't know that 17 games is why we saw some of the poor football that we saw this year in the NFL. We've talked about it. 10 or 11 teams in the NFL this year that were borderline unwatchable, right? The rich were rich and the poor were poor in the NFL this season. I'm skeptical about 18 games dramatically improving that product, but it is going to happen. And we'll see when, and players are going to benefit from it, and revenue sharing is all part of this. So as of right now, this just feels like bargaining chips. Both sides digging their heels in on each side, and we'll see at what point they come together. The LA Rams, you heard Jackson say it in the update, will host, in quotations, a game in Melbourne, Australia during the 2026 season. The NFL announced it on Wednesday. The game will be played at the Melbourne Cricket Ground. It'll be the first ever NFL game played in Australia. So when I saw this news that the Rams will play a game in Australia, obviously we don't know who they'll be playing, my first thought was to look up the flight time from LAX to Melbourne.
Have it pulled up. 15 hours, 55 minutes. I would like to see the safety data on this.
A 16-hour flight in the middle of a season. Players against this, too?
They have to be.
I would think so.
But I don't think they have a say in this, which is unfortunate.
Oh, it's happening. It is happening. Can we stop saying teams will host in these games? Please. Just make an announcement that the Los Angeles Rams will be playing a game in Australia. Why? I understand that there has to be a home team and an away team, technically. But let's just cross that bridge when we come to it.
The Rams have lost a home game in 2026 because they're going to play on the other side of the world. What time is this game going to even air?
Great question.
Is it going to be 5 o'clock in the morning?
This hurts players. This hurts fans who get to go to one less home game. I don't know if it's so much an issue for LA Rams fans who have trouble filling out SoFi Stadium. But, yeah, let's stop saying, if we're going to do this, let's stop acting like teams are hosting these games when they're taking a 16-hour flight.
I would love to go to this game.
To get there. Man. Coming up next, Belmont basketball. Huge win last night against Bradley. Came down to the wire. The preseason favorites in the Missouri Valley. Head coach Casey Alexander joins us coming up next on 104.5 The Zone. Lights not too bright for Belmont basketball last night. Huge win at Bradley, 80-77. Jonathan Pierre with the game-winning three-point play with 1.6 seconds left. Massive victory over the preseason favorites in the Missouri Valley Conference. Belmont Bruins head coach Casey Alexander joins us next on 104.5 The Zone. Coach, great to have you. Appreciate you taking the time, and great to talk Belmont basketball with you instead of Indiana basketball for once.
Thank you guys for having me. It's always nice to be on. That was a great win for us last night. We tried to give it away at the very end, but JP bailed us out, so it was good. Good to get home with a great win against a good team.
Well, Coach, you certainly would have been forgiven for dropping one on the road last night when you leave Nashville with 6 guys and a walk-on, down 3 assistant coaches. How did you get it done?
Yeah, you know what? It's just kind of one of those great days, and nobody really cares about it other than the people in our locker room. It just sounds like whining and complaining. And so you got to figure out a new way to be successful, and our players really rose to the occasion. We had some guys that Tyler Lundblade, for example, played all 40 minutes and had an incredible game. We had some reserves and role players that had elevated status last night, and they gave us good minutes. And that's just what it takes when your back's against the wall. Just figure it out. And our guys were very successful doing that.
What went into the shorthanded nature of your lineup and coaching staff last night? And just kind of what was the scramble mode beforehand to get everything organized for this game?
You name it. We had it. I mean, there were 4 coaches with the flu, not on the trip. We've got two of our top 6 guys that were not dressed for the game with injuries. We had multiple guys out there that had not practiced in the last 3 or 4 days because of illness. We had one that got sick yesterday. We thought he was fine until yesterday's shoot around, and he was like, I don't feel good. And by the time the game rolled around, he was out. So I told our trainer, I literally, I'm trying to juggle all that and manage it, and I couldn't even keep up with who had what. There was so much of it. It was just a super bizarre thing. I did not like our chances going into the game. I'll just say it that way.
Head coach Casey Alexander with us after a huge win at Bradley, 80-77 last night. Okay, so when a head coach doesn't like his chances going into a game, how do you communicate to the team beforehand? Like, take us inside the locker room pregame, and what enabled your guys to play freely enough to the point where you've got 5 players in double figures all contributing to an 80-point performance against the preseason favorite in the conference?
Yeah, we all know the stories. I mean, in every sport, at every level, the short-term opportunity is still there. I mean, if we have to go play a 10-game schedule, with the circumstances we had last night, there's almost no chance that it turns out in any favorable way. But we just had to play one game for 40 minutes. And so that's doable. It's not quite the same, but it's kind of what's similar to March Madness and, and all the magic that goes into that. I mean, a team like, Fort Wayne, they can beat Indiana in the NCAA tournament, easily, but they can't beat them. They're not going to win a 7-game series, so you just kind of have to look at it that way. Let's control what's right in front of us right now. Let's hoss up and give it a great effort, and we can do this. And so, the guys took the bait.
I don't know, Coach. I think there's a lot of teams that could win a 7-game series against IU at the moment. But we said we weren't going to talk about it. We're keeping it focused on Belmont basketball. Okay, so how do you keep this going to put together another win streak? First of all, as you get ready to host Missouri State on Saturday afternoon, what's the outlook in terms of your availability and your coaching staff? How is everybody feeling? I feel like I should have just led with that.
Well, we had a late arrival back home, and everybody's trying to get their feet back under them today. But you got to turn around. You got to do it again. I mean, it's an awesome league. Missouri State is at the bottom of the league, but they'll win more than their share down the home stretch. It'll be a tough game, no matter what. And that is not coach speak. It's really what I love about the Valley is how competitive it is, and regardless of record, you don't win if you don't play well. And so we'll figure out how many bodies we have, and we'll approach it like we do every other game. If you just look at it on paper, our home stretch schedule is favorable as far as strength of schedule kind of metrics are concerned. So there's an opportunity in front of us to put some things together. But need to make sure we don't get too far ahead of ourselves to make that happen.
Last night, Tyler Lumblade, as you mentioned, 25 points, 8 of 13 from 3. Did he know he was going to play all 40 minutes before tip-off?
He was told he was going to play all 40 minutes if he could. Tyler's a rare 21-year-old guy. I mean, he's as regimented, OCD, really anal about his health and fitness. And so I knew that if there's one guy that could do it, it would be him. And he never even looked tired. And I mean, he had a great game. He made a lot of tough shots. And that's really kind of that's the one piece that we haven't talked about is, to do anything like that. Think back to Oakland last year when they beat Kentucky in the tournament. Somebody just has to have one of those days. And for us last night, that was Tyler Lumblade.
Jonathan Pierre, I'd encourage anybody to go to @BelmontMBB on Twitter to get a look at this play. Calling game at the end, taking the bounce pass from half court, and just the wicked off-balance, coach, high off the glass, banking it in with the foul. But with 1.6 seconds left, Bradley out of timeouts, I'm told that you instructed Jonathan to miss the free throw, but he made it. What went into that, and what is your approach in those kind of moments?
Well, every circumstance is different. Timeouts are one key component of those kinds of decisions. But so he scores. There was 1.6 when he scored, but they put more time on the clock. Anyway, Bradley did not have a timeout, and so we're up 2, and I wanted him to miss the free throw. We were matched up defensively. Everybody had their man on the free throw, so they were going to have to get the rebound, get around their defender, and launch one from three-quarter court or so to beat us, and I liked those odds. But JP calmly went up there and virtually swished in the free throw, and all those bets were off. We had to call a timeout and go with Plan B.
Well, Plan B worked out all right, 80-77, the final for Belmont basketball as they improved to 8-5 in conference play, 16-8 overall. Coach, before we let you go, Super Bowl Sunday, where are you leaning?
I mean, you got to go to the Chiefs, don't you? I don't even know who they're playing. I just know the Chiefs are in it. No, I'm kidding. I'll be just as shocked if the Eagles win last night as I was that Belmont won.
That's a great way to put it. And Coach Casey Alexander of the Belmont Bruins has been our guest. Coach, congrats on that win. I'm sure the emotional come down has been something today, and you guys have a couple days to turn around and prepare for Missouri State. Best of luck Saturday. Appreciate the time as always.
A lot of black coffee. Thank you.
No doubt. Thank you. Coach Casey Alexander with us on 104.5 The Zone. Crazy game last night. Seriously. @BelmontMBB on Twitter. Go back and watch that final play. Jonathan Pierre getting it done. Belmont with a gutsy win against the preseason number 1 ranked team in the Missouri Valley. 4 p.m. the tip-off against Missouri State Saturday afternoon at the Curb. Encourage anybody to get out there. Check out some college basketball in Music City. All right, Coach Casey Alexander is going with the Chiefs. We have not really mentioned this tonight. NFL honors happening tonight. We're going to learn who the Defensive Player of the Year is. I'm sure Myles Garrett would love to go back-to-back in the midst of requesting a trade from the Browns. Rookie of the Year seems like a shoo-in for Jaden Daniels. MVP, Jackson. Who wins tonight, Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen?
Lamar Jackson, and also I hope Myles Garrett continues to campaign when he wins Defensive Player of the Year in his victory speech.
Oh, please. Yeah, please. I want it to happen just for that. It is really hard for me to find an argument for Josh Allen to win MVP other than he doesn't have it. It hasn't won it yet. We put it to a poll. Who do you think wins MVP tonight? @Lucas Panzica is where you can vote on the polls. It has felt like all season long it's been Josh Allen's to lose. And then the season ended and everybody looked at Lamar Jackson's numbers and said, wait a minute. Lamar, 4,172 pass yards, completing 66.7% of his passes. Josh Allen, 3,731 pass yards, completing 63.6% of his passes. Lamar, 41 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Josh Allen, 28 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Lamar, 915 rush yards, averaging 6.6 yards per carry. Josh Allen, 531, averaging 5.2 yards per carry. The only category that Josh Allen is better than Lamar Jackson is rushing touchdowns. Allen with 12, Lamar with 4. But it's beyond me, this idea that he's better in every category. Are we now moving the goalpost? Because this is a statistical award for the quarterback position, correct? That's what it's been. So why would it be any different this year? Just because Josh Allen doesn't have one yet?
There is MVP fatigue. You see this more in the NBA, where a guy won't win 3 MVPs. Like, it was really hard for LeBron to win a third one. It was really hard for guys. These voters get fatigued when it's the same guy winning the award.
I don't care.
It's arbitrary, man. That's what it is.
Is it because that Josh Allen doesn't have Stephon Diggs anymore? Like Amari Cooper doesn't exist? Come on.
It could literally come down to the fact that he hasn't won one yet. Because this is arbitrary. This is not some computer model or scientific way to determine the most valuable player in the NFL. It is a bunch of voters just picking who they want to win the MVP.
No, you're right. And it's a regular season award. And I get that Derrick Henry opened things up for Lamar this year, but I heard the morning show point out today that James Cook tied for the league lead in rushing touchdowns this season. So to act like Josh Allen was surrounded by scrubs in Buffalo, and plenty of guys played above their heads. I didn't think Shakir was going to have the year he had. I didn't think Buffalo was going to trade for Amari Cooper. I didn't think Cook was going to have the year he had, but he did. So, yeah, it's hard for me to come up with any argument against or any argument for Josh Allen to win MVP.
Arbitrary award.
We'll see. We'll find out tonight. NFL honors in New Orleans. Speaking of New Orleans, Ian Rappaport sat down with 3HL yesterday. You can watch it on 104.5 The Zone's YouTube page. Had something interesting to say about the Titans draft pick of Will Levis in the second round. But first, I want to remind you that today I will be hanging out at Jackson Hewitt in Murfreesboro from 3 to 5 p.m. It is tax season, so swing by, see us at 2862 South Rutherford Boulevard. Let him answer all your income tax questions, help you file. Plus, while you're there, sign up to win cash prizes and more. There's going to be free coffee to go with it as well. Again, 2862 South Rutherford Boulevard, the Jackson Hewitt in Murfreesboro. Don't put it off. Just come out there if you're in the area. Come say hi and get your taxes done with a chance to win some free money on top of it. The Jackson Hewitt in Murfreesboro, that's today from 3 to 5 p.m. I will see you out there. We'll hear what Ian Rappaport said about Will Levis and the Titans with 3HL next on 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12:02. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. In NFL news, the Bears announced today that principal owner Virginia Hallis McCaskey has passed away at the age of 102. McCaskey inherited the team from her father, George Hallis, after his passing in 1983. McCaskey was the oldest owner in all of professional sports and was a semifinalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2023. In former Vols news, the Los Angeles Lakers are trading Dalton Knecht, Cam Reddish, a 2031 unprotected first-round pick, and a 2030 pick swap to the Charlotte Hornets for center Mark Williams. Knecht is now paired with another former Vol in Grant Williams. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Was Will Levis a good draft pick at number 33 overall to the Tennessee Titans? Now, that is the title of our show today on YouTube, or you can jump in, 104.5 The Zone TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. F&M Bank chat is off and running. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in as well. Now, many Titans fans, initially, we also put it to a poll at Lucas Panzica on Twitter, where you can go vote. The initial reaction has been, of course not. Of course he wasn't a good draft pick. Look what happened with Will Levis in 2024. So far, the votes are 81% no, 19% yes, he was. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network sat down with 3HL at Radio Row in New Orleans. 3HL doing awesome interviews, by the way, throughout the course of the rest of the week. Coverage brought to you by Low T Center and Rude, proud to partner locally with Roscoe Brown. So tune in today, 3 to 6 p.m. for more great guests. Ian Rappaport was one of them. This was Rap Sheet talking about that Levis pick to the Titans and whether or not, even in hindsight, it was a good draft pick at 33 overall.
You know, it's funny because, like, I don't know locally what the opinion of the Will Levis draft pick is. It's sometimes hard for me to understand what fans sort of think.
They're out on Will Levis.
That's not the question.
Completely.
That's not the question.
Okay.
The question is, was it a good draft pick?
Okay.
And I would argue it was a really good draft pick. Second rounder,
right,
which, you know, you hope is a starter, but really a toss-up, 45%, I think, or something like that. If it's a quarterback of the future, it's a lottery ticket. You're done. You're great. If it's not, you didn't spend a lot of money, and
That's
the draft capital's okay. So I like, even though it doesn't seem like he's going to be their franchise guy, I liked the pick a lot, which I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, like, it's all pick versus the value of not making that select. So,
like,
you know, and you can move on now, and it's sort of like, okay, so we lost the second rounder. Cool.
Yeah. Like, you didn't win the grand prize on the lottery ticket, but
right.
you won, you know,
but you didn't,
$5 or a ticket.
Or you just didn't lose all your money.
Right.
Yeah. You know, it's like you paid for a $10 lottery ticket instead of all of your money.
So that's Ian Rappaport with 3HL. Again, the entire interview is on YouTube, 104.5 The Zone. Subscribe while you're there. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts. I get what he's saying there in a vacuum, right? Just in principle. And I loved the analogy Robert made this morning. I don't think he did it on the air on Ramon, Kayla, and Will, but he did it when we were just kind of sitting back there talking about this while RKW were talking about it. Because Robert agrees with Rap Sheet there. And he likened it to baseball. If you're getting a 99-mile-per-hour fastball and you have a pretty good take, you can have a good swing, but it's just a bad result, right? There can be a good swing, no contact. It's a strike. Maybe it's a strikeout. In this case, it certainly feels like it. But it doesn't mean it was a bad swing. And I get that in principle. But there are a couple problems with Rap Sheet's logic there. Okay, you didn't spend any money on it. Well, you did. You spent a lot of money last year. You spent more money than any NFL team in free agency to support the quarterback, to put your chips in on the quarterback for the 2024 season. That was only a second-round pick. Well, it was also a third-round pick. You traded up to get Will Levis to the top of the second round. This is a debate that probably has no true answer, right? When you're judging draft picks, is it a good draft pick based on the value at that time, or is it a good draft pick based on the result? I tend to think it's based on the result. Was it a good draft pick? Did he play well for you? No. Then to me, the answer is no.
hindsight's always 20/20.
Absolutely.
The risk-reward proposition of a second and a third round pick, I'll throw the third round pick. Obviously, they traded up to get Will Levis. The risk-reward there is huge if Will Levis turns out great, but it didn't. So it can still be a good move, a good draft pick to try to get your quarterback of the future. You had an aging Ryan Tannehill on the roster, a new front office staff that didn't seem to believe in what Malik Willis's skill set could do. And so you took a shot and you missed.
615-737-1045 if you want to chime in. Was Will Levis a good draft pick? Now, I think ultimately the question is, because the easy answer is no. Will Levis, he didn't perform. He was given the keys. He was given the opportunity in 2024, and it failed miserably. The Titans went 3-14. We understand that. Will Levis understands that. He talked to Jim Wyatt about it at the Super Bowl. Yeah, 3-14 doesn't look good on anybody's resume. But ultimately, maybe the question should not be, was it a good draft pick? It should be, was it a good process? Because a good process can still have a bad result. And we talked about this a lot with Ran Carthon and his approach in free agency last year, right? Almost every move that Ran Carthon made was universally praised. There were people with questions about the Snead trade, right? The capital you gave up, the contract you gave him, and the health concerns. And ironically, there were health concerns in 2024. None of them had anything to do with what we thought the concerns were going to be about around his knees at the time the trade was made. Injuries with L'Jarius Snead had nothing to do with his knees in 2025. But that aside, the Calvin Ridley trade was something the Titans desperately needed. Acquisition, not trade. The Lloyd Cushenberry signing was something the Titans needed. The Tony Pollard signing was something the Titans needed. For the most part, all of these big moves in free agency were good swings by Carthon. Let Rand cook. We preached it all offseason.
And these players don't go away because Will Levis didn't work out.
Yeah, and they can still absolutely
be. Maybe I don't think they got any blue chip players other than potentially Tony Pollard out of this class.
I don't know if you can call Pollard a blue chip player. He's a good player.
Good player.
He is a good player.
But they can be solid playmakers and foundation for your next quarterback or your next era of the franchise. These players just don't go away because they built around Will Levis.
Yeah, Cushenberry can help you this year when he comes back from the Achilles. Calvin Ridley can help you this year. Tony Pollard can. If Snead stays healthy, absolutely. But was it good process, bad results for the Titans in free agency last year? Similar question here. Was it good process in drafting Will Levis, bad results? Now, my individual opinion on this would not say it's good process, bad result, because I did not think highly of Will Levis going into that NFL draft. That was just my opinion of Levis as a prospect. But if you like Levis as a prospect, then it is a good process. And it is low risk with the second round pick.
If you went through the entire scouting process and you came forward with Will Levis can be the next franchise quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, and you traded a second and a third round pick to get him, that is a sound process and a sound decision.
Well, the problem with that is if you believed he was your franchise quarterback, why didn't you take him at 11? So I get what Ian Rappaport is saying there. Like, I totally understand where he's coming from, but I think there's a lot of missing context there, right? When he says, well, you didn't spend that much money on him. You did, because you spent money to support him. Well, it was only a second round pick. Well, it was also a third round pick that you don't have anymore. So I get where he's coming from, but I think there are some misguided points there. And look, Ian Rappaport, NFL Network, is as bird's eye as it gets. He covers the entirety of the league, so I'm not going to slam him for missing out those nitpicky details about that draft pick in particular, but that's where I am with what he's saying. Get where he's coming from. Think it's a little off base. 615-737-1045. Josh is up next. Hey, Josh.
Hey, guys. There's a business term called opportunity cost, and you don't look at what something costs in a vacuum. You look at the opportunities that you gave up, and that you measure the cost that way. And when I look at the quarterback classes, that was it wasn't a great pick. If you don't think Will Levis is your franchise quarterback, then you don't take him in the first round, because the next year there's a great quarterback class. We're in the same position this year as Titans fans. This is not a great quarterback class. But if we pick a quarterback this year, we're going to forego picking a quarterback the next year. You don't pick a suspect quarterback when the next class is full of talent. Because the opportunity cost is, man, I'm going to take a risky guy this year. Maybe I hit, maybe I don't, but I'm not going to take one next year. So that's why I really don't think the Levis pick was wise. I don't think it was. I don't think they really thought that he was a franchise quarterback, or they would have taken him in the first round. I hope they don't make the same mistake this year.
Hey, thanks for the call, Josh. Look at that, right at 60 seconds. Nailed it. Great points. I agree with Josh.
Who says you're going to be in that position next year?
Sure. And
you
there's
kind of
ways
have to take your shot when you're in position to take it.
And there's ways to maneuver, but I don't think that having the number one pick. And look, I was saying at the end of the regular season, when you have the number one pick and you have the need at quarterback, you're going to take a quarterback. I was fully saying that. It's very rare to see the opposite. The only example I could think of was the Browns taking Myles Garrett with the number one overall pick, despite having an obvious need at quarterback. Although maybe it wasn't that obvious in 2018 when they had a second round pick in the wings and Deshaun Kaiser that they didn't have a complete answer on. So I have moved away from that and turned to best available at number one overall. And I think that is the philosophy. And that's if you pick it number one overall. But I think that's also the philosophy of Mike Borgonzi and the Titans brass, if we are to listen to everything that they have said in this process. But we'll see. Again, that entire interview with Ian Rappaport on the 104.5 The Zone YouTube page, tons of great content on demand there for you to go and check out about the Titans pre-draft process, Super Bowl, and more. Speaking of the Super Bowl, we have talked so much about the Kansas City Chiefs, the search for a three-peat. What about the Eagles and Saquon Barkley, specifically his path to the Super Bowl? It is a fascinating one. And Bruce Feldman wrote a phenomenal piece, a very intriguing piece on The Athletic about Saquon Barkley's path to the Super Bowl. And we're going to get into that coming up next with Bruce Feldman of Fox on 104.5 The Zone. Big games need big wings. That's why Hattie B's is here. Hey, it's Lucas Panzica reminding you to say goodbye to football in the most delicious way possible. I'm going to tell you my plan for my watch party for Sunday afternoon's game. I'm going to bring a bucket and win the watch party by going to HattieB.com and ordering a bucket of 24 jumbo flats and drums for only $35. Any heat level, I am a medium man myself, especially if I'm bringing a bucket for a watch party where other people are going to be eating it. If it's just for me, I'll probably go with the hot, but it's whatever works for you. This is bang for your buck from the best hot chicken in the world, Hattie B's. 24 wings for $35. Download the Hattie B's app today to order. You also get a free dessert just by doing that. 2 for 1 right there. Big games need big wings, and that's where Hattie B's comes into play. Go to HattieB.com before Sunday. So many storylines across Super Bowl 59, but there might not be one more interesting than the season Saquon Barkley has had, and more specifically, the path that he took to get there. Joining us now from Fox is Bruce Feldman after a very interesting piece about Saquon Barkley. You can find it on The Athletic. Saquon Barkley is a superhero for the Eagles. His origin story is straight out of a comic book too. Subscribe to The Athletic while you're there to read it. Bruce Feldman joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. Bruce, how you doing? Appreciate the time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, just to start off, I was fascinated reading through this article, going all the way back to Saquon in high school, leading up to what he's done this season in the NFL. I don't even know where to start, Bruce. How he almost quit football before even playing at the varsity level. How he committed to Rutgers quickly because he thought that they made a mistake and offered the wrong guy, so he wanted to commit before they could take it back. I mean, what was the thing that just had you laughing and shaking your head the most as you worked on this?
Yeah, there were so many turns in his story that are pretty amazing. The part about him and the high school coaching staff going to him after his freshman year because they heard he was thinking about quitting. And I remember talking to Saquon a bunch of times for, when he was at Penn State. And one of the stories that really I won't forget was at one point I had asked him, I just said, well, you were always the best one on your teams, right? And he said, no. When I was in ninth grade, I was definitely not the guy. I said, who is the guy? And he said, it is Chad Rex. I was like, who's Chad Rex? And he was like, oh, he was like Johnny Manziel of our team. And I said, where is he at now? And he said, oh, he's here, meaning Penn State. And I just assumed he was like a backup player at Penn State. And then come to find out, he wasn't even a player at Penn State. He was just a regular student who happened to go there. And in Saquon's mind, when the coaches told him, hey, we see a lot of potential, you just got to get in the weight room. And as he said, as it says in the story, he felt like he was so skinny that he thought he would get broken in half if he went up to varsity. And he committed himself to the weight room, and he obviously has great genetics on top of it and an incredible work ethic. And I think what people will see in that story on The Athletic is just about how he has like an uncanny hunger to keep getting better in every little detail. And that's the stuff that I think is really most amazing about his story.
Yeah, and the article you talked to his former high school coach, former high school teammates, Kyle Flood, who recruited him at Rutgers, former coaches at Penn State that went on to coach with him at the NFL level with the Giants. So many levels to this. And just reading through it, Bruce Feldman with us at Bruce Feldman CFB on Twitter, I was just reminded at the jump that he made in production this year. I mean, we're in Nashville, right? Derrick Henry went from being a 1,000-yard rusher to 1,500 to 2,000. It was very gradual, but Saquon crushed his previous career high by 700 yards on the way to the Super Bowl this year. He doubled every metric of production he had with the Giants last year, and potentially the best season by a running back in NFL history. Is there a year-to-year jump from any player that you can think of that compares to something like this?
I wouldn't think at this stage of his career. I mean, usually running backs start winding down when they get closer to the late 20s. And obviously, he was coming off the injury. He was coming out of a weird situation with the Giants. I think credit to Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator with the Eagles, who really leaned into the run game when I feel like, you mentioned it, Derrick Henry and it just felt like everybody else was going in a different direction, and especially these two teams with the Ravens and certainly the Eagles have leaned into it, and he has had a remarkable season. I think he's complemented well by what Jalen Hurts can do as a running threat and physical runner at that. But it's awesome when you see all these big, huge runs, and he made that team really exciting, and I think it's a good fit. And I think for so many people, as you mentioned, I talked to Kyle Flood, who now is an assistant at Texas, but was the head coach at Rutgers, who he'd been committed to for a little bit initially. And Kyle Flood was like, I root for him whenever he's on TV because I know what a great kid he is. And I mean, that's the stuff that's just really awesome to hear because, I feel like there's just so many other stories out there that just kind of leave you feeling a little flat. And his story is inspiring. And you can get, there's a bunch of stuff in that story that kind of show you why so many people think he has such a unique spirit.
Bruce, we streamed the show on YouTube, and Jim in the chat asks, wasn't Barkley coming to Vanderbilt until Franklin left and went to Penn State, or is that just a rumor? What can you tell us?
That was Trace McSorley, who turned out to be a great quarterback for Penn State. I think that's who probably he means, because they were trying to get him to go to Vandy at that point, and then Trace flipped. So, as far as I know, because when I talked to James Franklin for the story a week ago, he said, at the time when they got there, this is Saquon's junior year of high school, he was not that highly regarded as a running back prospect. He was not the number one running back in the state. It was another guy who ended up committing there, but didn't do that much at Penn State. It wasn't until his senior year in high school where he really blew up. But even then, as Franklin told me, it was like he played an all-star game and he didn't even play running back. They moved him to fullback. So, good on James Franklin. He got the Trace McSorley part right, because he turned out to be a great quarterback for Penn State. And obviously Saquon is a generational talent.
Well, you compare Saquon's story to something out of a comic book. Maybe there's a multiverse out there where Saquon and Trace McSorley are playing for Vanderbilt and James Franklin many years ago, but certainly not how it happened.
Hey, you know what? You got a pretty special quarterback. I think Diego Pavia's story is kind of, I don't know if it's out of a comic book, but it's a pretty awesome one.
No doubt. He'll have another year, too, at Vanderbilt to keep writing it. Bruce Feldman, our guest for The Athletic and Fox. Again, his article, which we linked at 1045 The Zone. You can click on the link and go check it out. Saquon Barkley, a superhero for the Eagles. His origin story straight out of a comic book, too. Just crazy stories from his time going all the way back to before high school in Pennsylvania. But as we turn our attention to the game on Sunday, Bruce, what to you is the biggest storyline going into this game, and how does Saquon's run this year sort of stack up?
Yeah, it's been amazing. I think the question is, the Eagles, have been such a, explosive run game. Does Chris Jones and those guys with the Chiefs, can they limit him from breaking the big runs and the kind of momentum turning plays? I think the other part of it is, you do not want to be in a close game with the Chiefs late in the game. You just see they have an amazing knack for winning and finding ways to win. Andy Reid's last second play calls, in big games have been amazing. And obviously Patrick Mahomes' flair for being able to extend plays and do some magic late. It's going to be fascinating, because I feel like the Eagles are rolling right now, but nobody's been able to really get the best of Andy Reid and Mahomes, in these close games. And, it's just a question right now. I mean, both teams have like elite, former SEC D linemen in the middle. You obviously have Chris Jones on one side. You have Jalen Carter, who has been just an absolute monster for the Eagles. And I think if they get a lot of pressure on Mahomes and they can get to him and actually get him down, then the Eagles can probably do something that a lot of people around the country may be rooting for, is somebody to finally knock the Chiefs off the perch.
Well, and obviously Saquon playing a part in that, Bruce. He's less than 30 yards away from smashing the NFL record for rush yards, regular season, postseason combined. So many NFL records he's already broken this year. But do the Eagles need to win for this to be considered the best single season by a running back in NFL history to you?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's hard to quantify all that stuff. On one hand, you have longer seasons now. It's not a 14-game season. It's not a 16-game. It's longer now. Obviously, Saquon didn't play the last game when he could have, broke Eric Dickerson's record. It's hard to compare just eras, but I also think there is something about attrition and being able to last. I mean, he's a physical runner, and the way he's able to sustain like that. I mean, if he goes off in the Super Bowl and prevents the Chiefs from having the first ever three-peat, then I absolutely think you could make a strong argument for that. I mean, nobody's had the big runs like he has. I mean, in terms of, the big breakaway runs. So, I would say that's certainly open for debate. And I think if he finishes it and they leads to it, he doesn't have to run for 200. But if he goes for 100 and they win, I think you could make a strong argument that this is the greatest running back season by a running back in NFL history.
At Bruce Feldman, CFB is where you can follow him. A lot of reporting being done by Bruce as well on the coordinator movement happening in college football, assistant coaching turnover and changes in the NFL. I know you had on your podcast, The Audible, Bruce, Chip Kelly on very recently talking about that move from Ohio State to Vegas. Obviously, we see Ryan Day get the extension that broke today, but what did you take away from that conversation with Kelly in terms of the biggest reasons why he wanted to get back to the NFL?
I think it was like almost mission accomplished. He went there. His longtime friend Ryan Day, I think, needed a hand, and it was a good opportunity. Obviously, had a ton of talent to work with. It was a long season, 16 games. They finished. There was obviously rocky moments, especially with that Michigan game and that upset loss. But for him, and having known him for a long time, I think he's always wanted to get back to the NFL. And I think it was kind of a perfect scenario for him to make the move in that he got, it wasn't a full year basically at Ohio State, but it was close to that. And it finished, as good as it could have. And then to go walk into a situation now, he knows Pete Carroll. He coached against him in the old Pac-10 days when he was at Oregon and Pete was at USC. And now I think to work there, and obviously the Raiders, it's a heavy lift to fix that, but it's also, being back on the West Coast. I know he really loves it out here on the West Coast in Southern California. And so he was really excited. And I know from talking to him for a while, he was very excited about, he met with Tom Brady, who he knows, and I think that was, he was excited about Tom Brady's vision and what the Raiders feel like the direction they're going in. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes here with him as the OC.
Does he strike you as someone that wants to get back to being a head coach in the NFL, or do you feel like he's pretty content with this situation?
I think he's pretty comfortable with being the play caller and being kind of the head coach of offense. I think, in his case, we talked about this a lot, both in that podcast, but also offline. I think he's not trying to check off any boxes or whatever. Like, he was a head coach and he had some success with the Eagles, and then it started to go south, and then he got into a bad situation with the Niners and for a year. But I think for him, I'll say this, having seen him, we live in the same town out here in California, and a couple days before the podcast we got together, it's the happiest I'd seen him in a long time. And he always, he's usually pretty upbeat, and he's one of these guys who I remember, as a sideline reporter on some of his games, including when they upset LSU when he was at UCLA in an early season game. You could see how excited he is in games as a play caller. Like, I know that's something that he relishes, and like that kind of chess match and that part of it. I think that's what he loves more than anything about it. So I think he'll still be able to do that, and I think some of the other stuff that comes with it, I just don't think at this stage of his life and career, I don't think he's really that amped up about some of the external stuff that maybe comes with to be the head coach or to be in a different role. I think whereas this is probably the best part of the job from him, and he's probably most wired for it at this stage of his life.
And I feel like it was a really under-discussed reason as to why Ohio State was able to get over the hump, Bruce, the fact that Ryan Day gave up play calling to an accomplished coach like Chip Kelly. And now Brian Hartline steps up, and he's known as the wide receivers coach that has built just that machine in Columbus. Is Brian Hartline going to call plays for Ryan Day?
He is. This is a story we had done at The Athletic yesterday, early afternoon. That's where it was trending, that he was, the expectation was he's going to be the new offensive coordinator and the play caller. He had the title the year before Kelly got there, but he was not the play caller. Ryan Day was. This will be different. They're going to give him a chance to call plays. And I think Ryan Day realized he was much more involved in Ohio State's defense last year than he ever was, because he could be more of a walk-around head coach. And obviously, as you said, it worked out great. Kelly was a masterful play caller. I mean, he had great weapons, and they're still going to have some. Certainly, Jeremiah Smith's the best receiver in the country, probably the most talented player in college football. But you have to you're going to break in a new quarterback. It's expected to be Julian Sand. Both running backs are gone. They lose a lot of good players on defense. Got to replace some guys on the offensive line, but they're still really talented. So, I'll say this: Brian Hartline was probably the best receiver coach in the country the last few years, considering the receiver room he's built and stocked. And now he gets another big challenge, and we'll see how he can do with it.
I just wonder what kind of, maybe outline isn't the word, but what kind of precedent that sets for other coaches around the country, Bruce, to close the gap the way Ohio State just did with Ryan Day letting go of play calling. Because it struck me the other day, and I went back to try to figure out which head coach in college football, the last one to win a national championship as a play calling head coach, and I landed on 2013 Jimbo Fisher as the last one, and that takes us locally to Josh Heupel in Tennessee with the heights they reached in 2022 with Alex Golesh calling the plays. Heupel's taken that back. I just wonder if that's something more coaches are going to look to after seeing the success Ryan Day had relinquishing the play calling.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing because a lot of times I know from talking to some coaches are like, do what you're best at. And a lot of guys are like, well, I got the job because I was a great offensive coordinator. You know, Lincoln Riley is one who's now struggling in a big way at USC, but is one of those guys who was a play caller. Dave Aranda, who was struggling, you know, and on the hot seat going into last year, he leaned back as the defensive coordinator and was way more involved this past year, and they bounced back and had a good year. But you just don't see that many guys. Like, I know this because when you started to go in that direction, getting to Jimbo, I was thinking about it. You know, we usually think of offensive guys, but Pete Carroll was his own, you know, defensive play caller when USC was winning 20 years ago. But as you said, you just don't see that because it is such and the job as a head coach now, especially in this day and age where staffs are way bigger than they were even 5 years ago and certainly 10 years ago, it's so much more involved. I mean, I think, you know, Heupel has done a remarkable job as a head coach at Tennessee, just thinking about how that program was in such a ditch for like 12 years and plus. And he went in there as a really good hire by the AD, and I think they have made a lot of good moves, and they were good. You know, now the question is, can they take the next big step up? I mean, the Ohio State team that they faced in Columbus that night, I don't think anybody was beating them in college football. You know, they ran into a buzzsaw, but I think it's a good experience for them. I want to see what, you know, Heupel can do with Nico. You know, I think it was fun to watch them, and the SEC feels way more up for grabs now than it certainly did 2 years ago. You know, Nick Saban's obviously retired. Georgia took definitely a step back. I think Georgia's still going to be really good, but just we got Texas, and then who else is going to be there? Tennessee should be able to build off last year, I think.
Well, and then you wonder how Alabama factors in, Bruce. On the way out, Ryan Grubb reuniting with Kalen DeBoer after being fired by the Seahawks to be the offensive coordinator at Alabama. Was DeBoer's initial hire there before Grubb got that opportunity in the NFL. How much of a difference maker do you think that can be coming in to replace Nick Sheridan, who was a very inexperienced play caller and was kind of this last-minute call-up when Grubb bolted last year?
I think it can be really dynamic for them because he was really good, as you said. He knows Kalen really well. Kalen added two guys, one guy who was off the field who had now stepped into a more of a prominent role with the defense, who'd been involved in the defense at Washington. And now I think you bring in Grubb. I mean, I think this passing game, you got three really gifted receivers. Obviously, you had a freshman phenom who was 17 years old and we saw how explosive Ryan Williams was against Georgia. Jeremy Bernard's really good. They add Isaiah Horton from Miami, who's a rangy, dynamic athlete. We'll see what the quarterback situation looks like. I know Ty Simpson's really talented. I would expect them to bounce back. I think that Kalen's a really good coach. I think Grubb, he was somebody who really leaned on. I would expect them to be a playoff team. I think that, it took them, this season to kind of get through their identity and figure it out. I think they'll build off it this offseason because he's really, really good. I know what what he did at Washington, and that was not an easy flip. And to see what he did, I think he can build off of some of the foundation that they built, and getting Grubb is, I think, a huge addition.
Bruce Feldman has been our guest. Find him on Twitter at Bruce Feldman CFB, reporter at The Athletic and Fox. Again, the article, Saquon Barkley is a superhero for the Eagles. His origin story straight out of a comic book too. Really interesting stuff. Subscribe while you're there. The Athletic, just great journalism across the board. I've been a subscriber a long time. Would encourage everyone to go do the same and check it out. Bruce, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the game Sunday.
My pleasure. You too. Thanks.
All right, Bruce Feldman with us on 104.5 The Zone. Really interesting stuff on the background that has led to Saquon having potential season by a running back in NFL history if they get it done. There is one, though, that rivals him that we don't talk about enough that happened here in Tennessee. We'll get to that, wrap up the show with the polls next on 104.5 The Zone. I want to know who loaded the 8-bit video game version of Africa onto the system back there.
We will be potting it back up for the chorus.
I want to know who's responsible for this. I'm okay with it. I'm just curious. Last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. That's so funny. I mean, it's good. I'm not going to lie. It's hard to turn it off. Bruce Feldman was our guest. If you missed that, you can go back and listen to the podcast, The Buck Rising Show, wherever you get your podcast. Buck will be back tomorrow, to everyone's dismay.
Boo!
But it's been fun. Been fun holding it down for the last couple days. So left off talking about whether or not Saquon, if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, will have had the greatest single season by a running back in NFL history. And there's a case for it. I think Bruce agreed. But there is one that doesn't get discussed enough. And I heard him talking about it on Radio Row. He joined PFT Live with Mike Florio, Chris Sims, and that's Chris Johnson. We don't talk enough about how CJ went 2,000 in rushing, 500 receiving, and he's the only player in NFL history to have ever done that. The 2,500 mark. It doesn't get discussed. And as impressive as the jump for Saquon was, doubling his production, increasing his career high in rushing by 700 yards, Chris Johnson, 1,200 yards his rookie year, and then jumped to the 2,000-yard season and 500 receiving yards. Justice for CJ 2K. We don't talk about that enough as one of the best single seasons by a running back in the history of the National Football League. But good stuff there from Bruce Feldman. Big game tonight. Tennessee Lady Vols are at home hosting UConn. First time Kim Caldwell will share a sideline with Gino Auriemma. Number 5 UConn at number 19 Tennessee. 5:30 tip-off at Food City Center, Thompson Bowling Arena. Jackson, can you tell me the last time the Tennessee Lady Vols defeated UConn?
I can't.
I don't even know what grade you would have been in 2007.
I would have been in the 2nd grade.
Oh, my goodness.
How old were you?
No, like 6th grade.
Old.
Not that much better. 2007. Now, they've only played 4 times since then. UConn's won all 4. They went on that long hiatus, the very publicized hiatus between Pat and Gino. Didn't play after that 07 game until 2020. And they've played almost every year since then, UConn, 4 in a row. Oh, what a beautiful way that would be for Kim Caldwell to find that massive signature win against Gino Auriemma and UConn. Now, these games have not been particularly close over the years. Lady Vols lost by 6 in Knoxville in 2021, but otherwise it's been pretty heavily lopsided in favor of UConn. So we'll see if the Lady Vols can get it done. 5:30 tip-off tonight against Gino Auriemma and the Huskies. Let's do some polls.
I am not Lucas Panzica, but these are the polls. They're presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Was Will Levis a good draft pick? 82% say no, 18% say yes.
Good math by you. Ian Rappaport of NFL Network on 3HL yesterday says yes, he was, for the value of the number 33 pick, potentially getting your franchise quarterback. Ian Rappaport essentially called it low risk, high reward, ignoring the fact that the Titans traded up to get him. The Titans passed on him with the number 11 pick, and that the Titans did indeed spend a lot of money to put players around Will Levis in 2024, and it resulted in a 3-14 season. So all of that context to me has to come out with the answer no. It's really hard to take all those things into account and spit out, yes, it was a good draft pick. Hindsight's 2020, I get that, and I understand the premise of his argument. But, yeah, hard for me to say that, yes, that was a good selection with the 33rd overall pick when Will Levis is himself saying the Titans are communicating to him that they're exploring all options at the quarterback position because of how badly it went last year.
Who has the better roster for Super Bowl 59? 77% going with the Eagles.
I think most people agree the Eagles have the better overall roster, but they don't have Pat Mahomes, and they don't have Andy Reid, and they don't have Travis Kelce. We'll see what happens. It was a good game 2 years ago. I think it'll be a good game again.
The Eagles have the better overall roster. The Chiefs just have the better X factor. The most important positions are the ones the Chiefs edge the Eagles out on.
Chiefs have the difference makers. Now, I'm fascinated at the matchup between Eagles offense and Chiefs defense with how susceptible against the run the Chiefs have been in the playoffs after a fantastic season defending the run in the regular season, and that all colliding with the unstoppable force that is Saquon Barkley at the moment. That is so fascinating to me. But then on the flip side of that, I mean, it's a Chiefs offense that doesn't necessarily rely on the explosive play, and an Eagles defense that certainly doesn't allow the explosive play. So how do the Chiefs kind of try to manage to move the football? I don't know. There are varying degrees of fascination with this game. I don't care that it's a rematch from 2 years ago. I'm excited for it.
Who do you want to win Super Bowl 59? 57% going with the Birds.
I get that because of the Chiefs' fatigue, but am I alone in saying I just want to see him do the three-peat, man? I just want to see the Chiefs. I know, and I hear it as I say it, but they're already there. Right? They're in the Super Bowl. They might as well do something that we have never seen be done before. Like, what is another Chiefs Super Bowl? I get wanting to see somebody different win it, and so I'm probably alone in that, but I think I'm rooting for history. I really am. Give me the three-peat. What do they say? Or do they just do the chant? Or do the song?
Yeah, do the chant.
Yeah.
No, do it.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, Lucas is a coward, and how far do you think Vol Hoops gets in the NCAA tournament? 47% say the second weekend, 37% going with the Elite Eight, 9% going with the Final Four, and 7% say a first-round exit.
Only 7% saying one and done. This team feels like a second weekend team to me. Hopefully that means Sweet 16 and not second round. I worry about those scoring droughts. I mean, Tennessee has had a ceiling placed on it in the NCAA tournament because Tennessee's teams, apart from the one with Dalton Connect, were susceptible to a scoring drought at any given moment, really since the Grant and Admiral years, where that team just ran up against Purdue in an overtime loss. So I'd lean second weekend. There is a ceiling there of Elite Eight, maybe Final Four, but there's a lot of variance as well with these performances.
It all depends on matchup.
For sure. Absolutely. It always does.
Who will win MVP tonight in the NFL honors? 58% going with Lamar Jackson, 42% going Josh Allen. It should be Lamar.
It should absolutely be Lamar Jackson. It absolutely should be Lamar Jackson. NFL honors happening tonight. I'm headed out to the Jackson Hewitt in Murfreesboro from 3 to 5 today. Come get free coffee. Go ahead and get your taxes done. Get it over with and get some, an opportunity to win some free cash while you're out there. I'll see you there. 3HL is on at 3 from Radio Row in New Orleans. But first, Cover 2 with Blaine and Zach is coming up next. We'll be back at it tomorrow at 10 a.m. Buck will be back in the building. Appreciate you guys hanging out on 104.5 The Zone.